This is almost 4 hours of the most disturbing crimes that happen in various communities, compiled just for you. Let's start with the anime community. It was March 14, 2015, and the 7th Pretty Cure film was going to have its first screening at the Shinjuku theater. Strangely though, security at the venue was unusually tight for an anime screening, and it was all because just 2 days earlier, a 22-year-old man posted a series of tweets that put the entire staff on high alert. Pretty Cure is a franchise that has become increasingly popular in Japan and all over the world since its release. Produced by Washio Takashi, this franchise centers around a group of magical girls who are granted special powers to fight evil forces on Earth. This might sound simple and almost childish, but Precure, as it is commonly known, is the 7th highest grossing anime film franchise in the world. And apart from this, the video game sales of Precure had earned the parent company, Bandai Namco, a shocking total of 8 billion yen over the course of 20 years. This response is mostly due to the franchise's wholesome and cute content, but 22-year-old Fumiya Otaki didn't find it healthy or cute. While studying in Nibuta, Otaki initially fell in love with anime, but things would soon take a turn for the worse. On May 12, 2015, he posted on Twitter that he had planted a bomb in the popular Shinjuku theater, where the Precure film was going to be screened at. The tweet went something like this: "I've planted bombs around the floor of the theater. I will crash into the theater by truck and will burn the whole building down." Since there was only a day before the film's screening, the production company let the police take care of it. And after a thorough search of the theater's premises, the police department assured everyone that there was no bomb and that the pose was just a bluff. And the screening turned out to be a success, and everything went back to normal. But that was only on the surface. Behind the scenes, the police tried to find out who was behind those tweets, and finally, months later in August, they would find their culprit, who was of course none other than Otaki himself, and that was also when he revealed his motive. Otaki stated that although he was a fan of the show, the fact that the characters were so positive and happy made him incredibly jealous in real life. Hence, he decided to teach everyone who's associated with the show a lesson. That was the reason he put up that twisted post claiming he would bomb the theater. This case showed that even young adults can be driven to do stupid things, but in the next case we see a kid doing something similar but far more sinister.
I think the mystery shrouding this is what's causing the alarm to parents. Parents are afraid, kids are afraid.
Death Note is one of those anime that is popular both in and out of anime circles because of its unique plot and gripping characters. Death Note is about this guy called Light Yagami, who finds a book that has the power to cause someone's death once you write their name in it. This is obviously just a fantasy, but one girl would take this idea and make it disturbingly real. It was in October 2015 when Danielle Sherris found her daughter, whom we will call Lucy, unwilling to go to her school, which was Nashua High School North in New Hampshire. When Danielle asked her why her daughter didn't want to go to school, Lucy initially stayed silent, but eventually revealed the cause. Apparently her classmate, let's call her Irene, was inspired by Death Note to keep her very own list. In this book, Irene wrote the names of 17 students whom she disliked, and beside their names wrote the way they will die in the very near future. And though it may seem like a twisted joke to some adults, for children it was disturbingly real. While no transcript of the book is actually available, the depictions of the deaths are reportedly highly detailed and unsettling. And after seeing her name at the 3rd position in the list, Lucy became genuinely scared that she'd die exactly as told. And Danielle would talk about it in a Facebook post, saying, "On Friday, the administration uncovered a list naming 17 students along with the dates, times, and the ways they would die. My daughter was on that list and went to a principal in fear, only to be told it was being handled and to return to class. The school told parents it was based on a Japanese anime and not a threat. The girl who made the list put my daughter at number 3 over a dirty look from 2nd grade. My daughter is now afraid to return to school. Schools often start with a list like this, and I refuse to take it lightly. I don't want Nashua to be the next Columbine, because we didn't take a death threat list seriously." And even though the school tried its best to calm the parents, it was futile. The situation became so serious that the Nashua Police Department had to intervene, and only after a thorough investigation did it become clear that it was all just a childish fantasy, and that there was no actual threat to the students. Now you might think this is the limit to stupidity, but the next fan shows how easily one can get arrested.
静岡市の静岡高校に侵入して机などを盗んだとして市内の20代の男が逮捕されました。
Love Live is about a few teenage girls who live their dreams of being idols in modern day Japan. It is very similar to Pretty Cure and has gotten super popular since its release. In 2016, the physical sales of this franchise reached a whopping 8 billion yen, making it one of the most popular franchises in Japan. But like any other popular media, Love Live 2 had its fair share of controversy. But this was not due to its content, but due to its followers. While the majority of people are normal, some individuals here and there bring all the attention to themselves by committing weird acts. Like Kohei Ohori, a 28-year-old who seemed to not have outgrown his love for the franchise, because in October 2021, he decided to act on it by going on a burglary spree when he broke into a local school and stole one long desk, an extension table, an amplifier, and a desk from a private junior high. He escaped without being caught, and after a successful attempt, he then visited a private school for girls to steal 10 items too, including uniforms. In total, he would steal 16 items from these two schools. But everything nearly went wrong because Ohori almost got caught when a police officer stopped him while he was transporting an amplifier on a bicycle. He only narrowly escaped by lying that he is on his way from playing in the basement of Shizuoka Station. The success of stealing from the first and second school made him so overconfident that he even decided to steal from a third school. This time, however, he wasn't satisfied with spending only an hour there. He actually decided to spend around 12 hours from 6 PM to 7 AM on the school premises. Unfortunately for him, he would eventually get caught, all thanks to the residents who complained that someone was in the school even after the school hours. And on February 2022, when Ohori stood trial, the prosecuting lawyer revealed Ohori's true motive. You became deeply absorbed in Love Live Sunshine, a school-themed anime. You wanted to recreate the kind of school life you had imagined back in your student days. And that's what led you to the idea of stealing a desk from a school. But originally you had purchased a desk online. Why did it escalate to theft? And even advocates would ask a similar question. You do know that school desks and furniture can be purchased online, right? And he would simply say, yes, but Love Life is about the real school environment. I wanted to feel like I was truly a part of that world. The school life, the club activities. So to enhance that immersive feeling, I felt like I needed an actual desk that had been used in a real school. So you're saying a desk bought online wouldn't help you fully visualize or immerse yourself in that world? Exactly, yes, that's right. Why did you steal? Originally, I felt homesick, like I wanted to experience the nostalgia and mood of my school days and youth, or that I wanted to go back to spending time with my family. The reason was that I wanted to go back to when I was little. And after much back and forth, Ohori would be sentenced to 2 years in prison for stealing. But while Ohori's actions can be considered somewhat harmless, this next Love Live fan took things to a far more dangerous level. On October 23, 2015, a teenager named Tanaka shockingly posted a violent message targeting Love Live fans. He even included a chilling picture of himself, staring into the camera while brandishing a knife. And the post reads, without exception, I will kill all of this country's Love Livers with these hands. Love Livers are frauds and participate in antisocial behavior like stomping all over movie theater flyers. I will not allow such people to remain on this earth. I'll definitely kill them. Tanaka would quickly realize how foolish it was to make a public threat and reveal his identity at the same time. And the police also wasted no time in arresting and charging him with obstructing business. Now ironically, during his questioning, Tanaka confessed his love for the anime, stating that his threats stemmed from his hatred for how some people behave publicly. Their reactions annoyed him to the point of believing they deserved to be unalived. Now in contrast to Tanaka, who expressed his anger on others, this next fan chose to display his passion for anime through self-harm.
Este chico se enamoró de un personaje de anime, por eso hizo algo terrible.
It was August 24th, 2016, when Wendy Arrones Abando and Jesus Gamboa Ramirez entered their son's room to check up on him, and what they found in his room was something no parent ever wants to see. Their son Taylor Gamboa Arrones was years old and deeply into anime and manga. Specifically, he was into an anime called Heaven's Lost Property, which centered around a teenage kid named Tomoe Sakurai, who stumbled upon an alien girl who then became his servant. While the plot could seem pretty straightforward, this anime was famous for fan service, which in anime refers to elements included in a series specifically to please the audience, often by appealing to their desires or expectations. For example, Heaven's Lost Property openly showed its alien main character in revealing clothes, and was full of dirty jokes and suggestive humor. Fan service like this is really popular in the anime community and ensures that people watch these shows and bond with the characters. Sometimes, however, this bond turns out to be too extreme. Like in the case of Taylor, who developed an unusual and unsettling obsession with the alien character Icarus. Taylor was completely smitten by her, buying caps, shirts and action figures, and other merchandise related to her. He would even write letters to her and dream of being her master. His obsession was so complete that he seemed to have lost the ability to distinguish between a fictional character and reality. And 1 month later, on his birthday, Taylor, unable to bear her absence, would write one final letter.
I feel my heart explode and my soul break and crush, being destroyed each time. My heart is crushed without hope and my body aches in internal and external pain. It hurts. It hurts so much that you writhe from the pain in your chest. You can't stop crying because you know you're unhappy that you love someone and that you can't stop suffering. I love you, Icarus, and it hurts to know that you're not here. And I cry sometimes endlessly, and you want to escape, but you can't. I'm sad for myself. She existed for me, and what use is it to live if you can't be with the person you love so much? Truly. What's the point of working if you can't be with or go out with the person you love so much? I love it. If she were real, I would be happy. I would work only for her, and now I study for her. I want her to be real one day, to be able to tell her, marry me, Icarus, and see how you melt into me. I believe in her. She had all the good of being human and the purity of heart. I love you, Icarus, forever and always.
And after writing this letter, Taylor would go into his bedroom and leave this earth. He was dead. When his parents checked up on him, they found the walls covered with posters of Icarus and discovered the letter. And they would then go on to say,
we have a letter where he says that he wanted to die for love of that girl. He was delighted with Icarus. He asked God to forgive him, to take him to be next to the girl, and if not, he was going to be at the gates of hell, be with her. My wife got up at 5 AM, knocked on the door and didn't answer me. I looked out the window and saw him suspended with the chain. And when I took him down, he was purple. I didn't take off the chain, which he wore on his pants.
And after coming to know more about the anime culture and seeing how it adversely affected their son, the parents would openly call for a ban on anime. His father would even burn all the merchandise Taylor bought.
I burned all the things, shirt, cassette, pins and posters. He was in the 7th year of school. He didn't like studying. The money we gave him to eat was spent on that cartoon. He was obsessed. He thought the doll had life. We want to help many young people who are obsessed with these dolls to ignore them, and for parents to be more aware of their children.
And while from their perspective this might just seem justified, their decision to call for a ban just because their son was addicted was met with ridicule on anime-related internet forums.
Kid had his screw loose and self-terminated. As unfortunate as this is, there are far worse. Since the dawn of video games, anime and other stuff that is flat out unrelated, the parents/others of sad events blame everything.
Fans like these blame other fans for tarnishing the image of the anime industry, but they don't realize that the bad reputation might also come from people inside the industry, like the next man.
It came to light that the 52-year-old producer had reportedly forced the year-old girl to give him explicit photos.
Manga creators often face negative stereotypes outside the anime community. Unfortunately, men like Kenya Suzuki only serve to reinforce these harmful perceptions. Suzuki is the creator of the famous manga Please Tell Me, Gaiko-chan, which was started in 2014 and ended in 2021, and the reason behind its end is a dark one. It all started when Suzuki's friend, another manga creator, Batan, tweeted out that Suzuki had been missing since December 8th, 2020. He asked everyone to spread the word and help him find his friend. And a few days later, Suzuki would be found, but Batan had no idea about the disturbing reason behind Suzuki's absence. A few days before, the police started searching Suzuki's house because they got information from customs that he had imported some illegal things from Germany. And the police subsequently found a large amount of obscene material in Suzuki's house, material that was alarming on a different level, because it involved explicit images of younger people, if you get what I mean. And after searching more, the Aichi Prefecture police would end up finding around 46 such magazines in Suzuki's house. And during the interrogation, Suzuki did not hesitate to tell the dark truth. He admitted that while he bought those magazines himself, it was legal when he bought them. And on top of that, he said that those magazines were imported from Germany because he desperately needed them.
No matter what, I wanted photos of nude from overseas, which you can't get in Japan.
And all throughout his trial, Suzuki didn't once try to appeal the court's decision. and almost immediately pleaded guilty to all the charges. So on 29th of March 2022, he was sentenced to 1 year in prison with 3 extra years on probation. Now just 2 years later, an even more disturbing case emerged, involving a prominent anime producer. This time, however, the crimes were even more disturbing and more dangerous. Your Name and Suzume are 2 anime films that everyone praises immensely. They both have been nominated in many film festivals all around the world. But this story would begin in 2024, when Suzume receives the Best Film Award in the Crunchyroll Award Show. But while this is happening, behind the scenes, the Japanese police are already investigating a series of incidents. When they come across the name of the producer of Your Name and Suzume, Koishiro Ito, and the allegations against him turn out to be pretty disturbing. In 2021, he supposedly paid a girl a decent sum of 12,000 yen to get her to take explicit selfies and sent them to him. Following that, he also paid 2 other girls around 50,000 yen to engage in adult acts with him. But the problem was, the ages of these girls ranged from to years old. Ito, after being arrested and charged, didn't hesitate to confess the crimes, pleading guilty to 11 cases of exploitation, 9 cases of photographing inappropriate poses, 10 cases of creating inappropriate content involving 1 case of non-consensual adult activity involving 1 case of exploitation, and possession of 5 pieces of inappropriate content involving. And the truly puzzling aspect of this is that Ito did this knowingly. And the judge would give a final ruling that said,
he repeatedly offered money to engage in and secretly photograph images of intercourse. This has a significant adverse effect on the healthy development of the mind and the body of the victims, who are immature in their ability to make autonomous decisions. The degree of responsibility and blame is high.
After this news came out, the Your Name director, Makoto Shinkai, who's a long-term associate of Ito, tweeted out how he felt about this whole issue.
Upon seeing the news of the arrest of someone involved with the work, I am deeply shocked. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt sympathies to the victims. I also feel truly sorry for causing unease among everyone who loves and supports the work. I believe that this incident does not diminish the value of the work itself, but it is only natural that some may view it with distrust. The fact is truly disturbing and saddening to me.
Now this next case takes obsession to a truly new level.
SNS に投稿された写真から特定した地下アイドルの女性の自宅に押し入り
Eina Matsuoka was a young idol in an underground J-pop group, and like many performers, she regularly shared selfies and candid snapshots online to stay connected with her fans. But there was one man who was looking for more than just a connection. The man was Hibiki Sato, a 26-year-old who became obsessed with Eina in an unsettling way. He didn't just enjoy her music or photos, but wanted to meet her in real life. And how far he actually went for this is just a proof of his obsession. One day when Eina posted her casual selfie, Sato noticed something that he could exploit. He saw a faint reflection of a train station in her pupils, and after zooming and enhancing this image, he used Google Street View to match that reflection to a real station. But his obsession wouldn't stop there. To know which floor she actually lived on, he studied how the light bounced off her curtains and other videos, observed the angle of shadows, and pieced together the exterior of her apartment building. And so step by step, he used these images to construct a map towards her house. It was September evening in 2019 when Sato put his plan into action. He followed Eina from a concert venue and waited outside her Tokyo apartment. And when she entered the building, he pounced on her and covered her mouth with a towel, dragged her down, and ended it with SAing her. She fought back by screaming, and thankfully this is when the neighbors were alerted, who then called the police. But by the time they arrived, Sato was long gone. Now despite this, the police managed to arrest Sato on September 17, over 2 weeks later, after piecing together security footage and her report. And during questioning, he calmly admitted to everything as he told investigators he located her address by analyzing her social media photos. But while this case is a story of obsession, the next one goes to places that are deeply shocking and disturbing.
The jurors found her guilty on all 6 charges, including kidnapping, aggravated assault, and unlawful restraint of a...
In January of 2012, 19-year-old Christina Regusters entered the Bryant Elementary School in Philadelphia to kidnap a 5-year-old girl named Jane. who came to the same daycare where she worked. To get Jane out of the school campus, Christina disguised herself as Jane's mother. She wore an outfit similar to her mother and stuffed a bag in her dress to look pregnant. Now her next task was to deceive the school officials. This turned out to be a little complicated, since the school's policy stated that a parent has to provide identity proof to take their children home. This was obviously in place for security reasons. But that day, for some reason, Rain and Lil John, Jane's teacher, would allow Christina to take the 5-year-old with her, even though Christina didn't provide any proof, and all of this was captured by the cameras. After taking Jane to her house, Christina blindfolded and did unspeakable things to the girl's body. This torture continued for about 19 hours. During this time, Christina, to trick the girl, made sure that she changed her voice in different tones to make it seem like that many different people were actually torturing her. She even put up an illusion that there was a woman named China in the room, but this detail would come back later to bite her. After she did what she did, Christina bathed Jane and left her in ragged clothes in a nearby park. This was early in the morning, and Jane's cries for help were mostly unheard, but this was until a sanitation worker discovered her and actually called the police. When she was eventually examined by a doctor, they found out that she was severely injured in certain areas, and so quickly the police started investigating the case with the help of what Jane could recollect of the whole ordeal. She recounted everything she remembered from the moment she was picked up at school to the moment she was left in the park, and out of the whole recollection, one detail stood out. The woman who kidnapped her had a talking parrot that kept saying, "You're fired." And this proved to be a crucial detail, and the police started asking people about this bird, and they were gradually led to Christina's house. On top of this, when Jane was driven around the neighborhood by the police, she pointed to a house with a green door and claimed that this was where she stopped with the woman. And this house actually turned out to be Christina's. And when the police entered, the talking bird exclaimed, "You're fired." In February of 2013, Christina was finally arrested and charged with serious allegations of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and indecent activity with it. But it took almost an entire year before Christina actually appeared in the court, because the prosecution needed more time to get definite evidence that it was her who did it. And this, they actually did. The first piece of evidence was regarding her name she used to trick Jane, which was China. Upon interrogating Christina's family members, it was revealed that China was her childhood nickname. Another piece of evidence they presented was Christina's search history, just before the day of the kidnapping, which included a search for a Muslim outfit, which emulated her actual mother's outfits, and tips on how to remove DNA evidence. But these would be pale in comparison to the things they found in her older search history. Christina's history was filled with searches for inappropriate and videos, and especially anime that showed being tortured in cruel and disturbing ways. The search history hinted that Christina was heavily into a genre of adult content called lolicon, which shows and early teenagers in indecent acts. These details were very important, since her defense argued that Christina wasn't the main criminal, but other men were.
My client is a major participant in this affair. I think there are others who are far more responsible.
But by showing this dark side of her through her search history, it was proof beyond doubt that it was only Christina all along. All of these facts turned out to be crucial in convincing the jury of Christina's crime, and finally in October 2015, she was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Jane's family even filed a lawsuit against her school, whose fault of letting the girl go with a stranger was the main reason this actually happened. But while anime may have played a role in this crime, the next man went even further than that.
On the charge of murder, I sentence you to life imprisonment and impose a minimum period of imprisonment of 13 years.
Bleach stands out as one of the most popular animes ever. Its immense popularity even inspiring a man in Auckland to commit a crime. It's 2017 in central Auckland, and a 69-year-old man named Michael Mulholland was at his home in his ground floor flat when a man named Gabriel came to his door, having just been scammed by a woman upstairs, from whom he was attempting to buy illicit materials from. But she had taken his money and fled. After Michael explained to Gabriel that he knew nothing about the woman and asked Gabriel to leave, he responded by punching him in the face, rendering him unconscious. Gabriel then proceeded to stomp on Michael's head approximately 90 times over a span of 3 minutes, and as a result of the sustained attack and blunt force trauma, the elderly man died at the scene. Police arrested Gabriel the following evening, after they watched the CCTV camera footage of the whole incident. Now the saddest part of this crime is that Michael was totally unrelated to the crime. He died simply because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But during his trial, Gabriel began to fabricate a story, claiming he was mentally ill and that his actions weren't in his control. Now, unluckily for him, the jury didn't buy his story, and he would be sentenced to life in 2018. But over the years, Gabriel would keep appealing multiple times, and the forensic psychiatrist who evaluated him revealed some very interesting details. The most important one is that Gabriel was supposedly inspired to kill Michael in that manner because he saw it in the anime Bleach. Gabriel claimed that Ichigo, the protagonist of the series, uses such a method to unalive his opponent, and so he did that too. And not only this, immediately after his arrest, Gabriel would suddenly start talking in Japanese, leaving the police confused. But it was later revealed that Gabriel wasn't actually Japanese but Korean. And after connecting these details, in 2024, the defense psychiatrist named Dr. Kavney realized that Gabriel's Japanese talk after his arrest was actually a monologue from Bleach.
We have considered the video and the transcript of Mr. Yad Elohim's monologue. Dr. Kavney identifies several similarities between the video and the attack on Mr. Mulholland, and there are similarities also with Mr. Yad Elohim's monologue. The argument is that the video and the transcript together justify the inference that Mr. Yad Elohim was in the grip of a delusion when he attacked Mr. Mulholland.
But the court ended up denying this appeal too. And while Gabriel got inspired to kill one man, this next individual didn't stop at only one person.
In the video, he admits killing his mom, his dad, and his brother, but investigators say he planned on killing many more.
On March 12, 2012, a tragedy unfolded in the house of Trace Hessler, a popular anime reviewer. To the outside world, this seemed like an abrupt event. In reality, however, it had been always on the verge of happening. Trey was when he created his YouTube account, Lenscap Productions. His usual uploads were edgy and humorous anime reviews, which earned him the name Mr. Anime. And apart from that, Trey was also an aspiring filmmaker, so he frequently uploaded short films to his channel that featured his brother Mark and mother Rhonda. But over time, his content began to shift. As the years passed, Trey's style and demeanor began to drastically change. He became darker, sometimes even talking about unaliving himself, and his channel's content was also slowly moving away from anime towards discussions on guns. He started displaying rifles and joking about them. In one particular video, he even used a rifle to shoot a couch. One of the first people to notice Trey's fascination with guns was Charles Scroggins, an old man who lived in Hempstead, to whom Trey frequently showed off his guns to. Now, Charles was initially fine with the whole gun talk, but he also slowly realized that Trey started talking about shooting humans and not just animals, and this struck Charles as very odd and disturbing. Even Rhonda, his mother, started to notice things, but she kept quiet. For example, she found out that Trey was into killing animals with his pistol.
I was totally sober when I shot my cat. I grabbed the break barrel 20 gauge and I pulled the hammer back and I shot the cat basically like in half.
But these incidents were actually ignored as signs of a deeper turmoil. Unbeknownst to all, Trey was even secretly doing something far more sinister. He made a list of all the school attacks that took place in the US and even graded them according to the weapons they used. And he also started researching serial killers and even planned to turn into one. Slowly, his behavior became so crazed that he even called the police and inquired whether or not a civilian could possess body armor. And when asked why he inquired about this, he simply replied with that he just wanted to know since he saw someone selling it. The officer who actually spoke with Trey was Michael Maths, the same officer who would be one of the first witnesses to Trey's destruction. And so in early 2012, Trey started creating a plan to attack people in his high school. That year, he also posted a video titled "Mr. Anime is planning something," as if to hint at this. But little did the viewers know what would really happen. On the night of March 20th, Trey drove from his Hempstead residence, where he'd moved after his grandmother passed away, to his parents' home. And after parking his Mustang in the garage, he went into the hallway and called his mother to inspect a bump on the car. This wasn't his actual intention though. When she arrived, he decided to shoot her 4 times. And hearing these shots, his brother also asked him what happened. And in reply, once he saw him, Trey shot him twice. But since those shots actually missed, Mark escaped and hid in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Trey went to his father, who was half asleep, and unfortunately shot him twice too. He then went to the bathroom where Mark was hiding and shot through the door until he passed away. But it didn't stop there. Slowly realizing what he had done, Trey started breaking down more and more. According to himself, he started to randomly shoot his already dead family members. For him, it was a way of ensuring that they didn't suffer.
Since I already shot 3 people, I don't want anyone to be suffering, laying on the floor for hours, moaning and groaning. I got to retrace with a more powerful weapon and shoot him again.
And once the clock struck midnight, Trey started to actually break down and destroy the entire house. He even wrote messages on the surface of their doors. Why did I do this? And I love my mom, dad, and brother. And God forgive me because I cannot forgive myself. At noon the next day, he finally left the house after calling his parents' workplaces and telling them that they wouldn't be coming because they were sick. He then started his Mustang and fled. But this was hardly the end, since he then went to the place where he actually planned the attack, which was his own school. But after watching the flood of people actually coming out, Trey hesitated to actually attack. Finally deciding against it, he left the school campus to spend the night at a friend's house. Now relatives of the Sessor family actually started to panic, as no one from the household was responding either to their calls or messages. So they eventually decided to call the police and ask them to conduct a welfare check. And when Officer Michael actually entered the Sessor house, he was horrified to find the scene of destruction laid out there. In no time, there was a police squad looking for Trey, and within hours of tracking him to his friend Casey's house, the police surrounded him from all sides. But even then, Trey almost made things violent, but decided to stop at the last moment. Now Trey's friend Casey was actually surprised by this, since he had no idea what Trey just did to his family back in his house. His surprise seemed evident in the body cam recording at the time of the arrest. Now after being arrested, Trey was interrogated regarding his motives in committing the crimes, and this was his answer.
I mean, do you have any idea what set you off?
There wasn't any kind of argument. I guess too much exposure to violence had built up over all the things that I had shot and all that stuff.
But why them? Why your mom, your dad, your brother?
Maybe because they were the first immediate human targets in my sight.
On August 2nd, 2012, Trey then pleaded guilty to all the charges and was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole. But while the victims were mostly adults here, it is different with the next one.
歩いていた女の子を見つけ後をつけた。家に侵入して首を絞めたと供述しているということです。
In 2021, the Okayama District Court was the center of attention in Japan, all to one man being tried for a murder case, Kunihiko Katsuya. The funny thing is that Katsuya was already sentenced to 10 years of prison for stabbing a girl in 2015, but just as his sentence was ending, the dark secrets about his past began to surface. It all starts when Katsuya is a teenager in the year 2000. At that point in time, his violent tendencies started appearing as random acts of punching and his female classmates. There seemed to be no reason why he did it, but for these offenses he only received a few weeks of probation. After that, Katsuya's name didn't appear in any arrest records until 2010, when the police arrested him for punching a and stabbing her with a screwdriver. The court at the time that found him guilty sentenced him to 4 years in prison. His crimes had clearly escalated, but they fade in comparison to what came next. In 2014, after serving time in prison, he immediately found his way back just months later, where he committed a more heinous crime. He stalked a girl and ended up stabbing her brutally. Despite bleeding heavily though, she would still survive. And it didn't take the police much time figuring out that Katsuya was behind all of this too. And so a few months later, he was sentenced to 10 years of prison life. And this is when his fate seems to take a turn. And to know why, we have to move to the past again. In the years between 2004 to 2007, 3 notable cases of stabbing had occurred. In the 2004 one, a named Yukiko Tsusushio was stabbed by a man in Tsuyama who forcefully entered her house. But despite being rushed to the hospital, the girl died due to the nature of her injuries. Similarly, in 2006, another be stabbed while she was going back home, and this time again the stabs proved to be fatal. The police even released the CCTV footage of the suspect to the public, but this strategy failed since no one could identify the killer. And then in 2007, Suzuki Unoze was stabbed right in front of her house while returning from school, and while she was transferred to the hospital, all she could mumble were the words
"an adult"
and
"a man."
But sadly, she too lost her life due to the injuries. These 3 cases were particularly notorious because the criminal remained unknown, but this was until 2017 when the police started connecting the dots. It was Katsuya who committed all 3 of the other stabbings, and surprisingly, they were right on the mark, because soon enough, in a letter to his mother that year, Katsuya would basically admit to those crimes. But when investigators questioned him, his answers were inconsistent. While he initially denied the allegations, his denials became less frequent over time. In a session with a psychiatrist, for example, Katsuya almost confessed to the crimes. And And this is one of the psychiatrist's reports that reads,
"At the time of the evaluation in 2015, the defendant's IQ was 76, and at the time it was not clear that he was mentally disabled. At the current assessment, the defendant's IQ is 70, which is below the standard of 69 for intellectual disability. The doctor also said the defendant did not have any mental disorder that would affect his legal judgment at the time of the incident, and that his personality traits could explain the entire incident."
The fact that his IQ was so low at the time of the investigation meant that any confession he made was close to being invalid, but the doctor went forward with the evaluation and found unsettling corners of Katsuyo's personality. He noted that Katsuyo's tendencies lean towards sadism and quote-unquote loving. In his personal life, Katsuya also seemed to love a specific genre of anime called bishoujo anime, which is a broad term used to describe anime/manga that shows female characters as cute. And although this genre is generally considered clean, the female characters in these anime often border on being depicted as dolly or suggestive young girls. And the doctor supposed that this might have had something to do with Katsuya's crime. And upon further investigation, it was also revealed that Katsuya had around 8,000 images of bishoujo girls saved on his phone, and that while he was in prison, he continually demanded manga from his mother. And slowly but surely during his evaluations, Katsuya would also begin to reveal his sinister fantasies.
"From the time I entered school, I imagined a girl in a white blouse suffering."
And then he would describe how he would hurt her in very graphic details. But when asked if he regretted his actions, he responded that he never felt any remorse for his victims. And this is a snippet of the trial's conversation.
"You said you were going to follow the girl and it would be fun to watch. But is the target a girl from elementary, middle, or high school?" "Well, I think it's all. Elementary, middle, and high school included. I targeted them all if they were cute."
The defendant was living in Hyogo Prefecture at the time, but he loved cars and often went out.
"From what you said you had been to Tsuyama City about 4 times before this incident." "Yes. Both cars were parked in the same parking lot on the 8th floor of the same shopping center." "How were you doing when you hit the ground?" "All 4 times I got off on the fire escape. The reason was that I thought there might be security cameras in the elevator." "When are you talking about?" "About 2003 to 2004.
Katsuya explained that he left home planning to stop at the Totori sand dunes before heading to Tsuyama. He parked at a shopping center, wandered for a while, and came across an elementary school. There he noticed a walking home alone and decided to follow her. And eventually, learning where she lived, he went to her house and asked her the time and followed her inside. And what he planned started as a prank, of course, quickly turned into something far more serious.
"I thought the girl was cute and I wanted to play a prank on her, but it didn't play any prank. I strangled her. She resisted so violently that I strangled her again and then took out a small sword from my bag."
And when asked why he did all of this, Katsuya gave a blunt answer.
"I strangled the girl to see her suffer,"
he said.
"I was trying to knock her out and play a trick on her. The girl collapsed, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I stabbed her 4 times in the chest and stomach. I strangled her for 2 reasons, to see her suffer and to play a prank on her."
Now finally, over the course of many hearings, Katsuya again would be sentenced to a life sentence in 2022 for the Tsuyama killings. And for now, the prosecution is still trying to charge him for the 2 other murders. Now let's take a look at the VTuber community, streamers who use cute virtual avatars that can turn very disturbing. It's late 2024. Anycolor, the company behind Niji Sanji, one of the biggest VTuber talent agencies in Japan, along with its affiliate event venues, suddenly starts receiving a wave of life-threatening messages through email and anonymous forums. Nobody knows who's behind it, and with several Niji Sanji events about to take place, Anycolor and countless fans online launch a massive manhunt, hoping to stop something tragic before it actually happens. It all starts when an anonymous user begins posting extremely hateful messages aimed directly at Anycolor and its talents across multiple anonymous forums, and even goes as far as submitting them through the company's official contact form. In one of those messages, he threatens to pour gasoline and take the lives of the people at the Niji Sanji event venues, including staff at Anycolor's headquarters in Tokyo. And his messages start to escalate even further, including graphic threats of violence towards the company's staff and VTubers. And in a country that treats these kinds of statements as serious criminal offenses, especially after the 2019 Kyoto animation attack, which ended the lives of dozens and left many more injured, Anycolor has every reason to see this as something that could put not just their company, but innocent people in danger. Not long after receiving the threats and realizing how serious the situation had become, the company would begin working closely with law enforcement, including the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. And with that much support behind them, they would immediately start preparing both civil and criminal complaints, aiming to track down whoever was behind these messages. From there, investigators would begin piecing together the online activity of this user, working off the messages submitted through AnyColor's inquiry form, along with the threads that were posted across various forums. Now, while very little about the process was ever revealed publicly, based on how Japanese law enforcement typically handles cyber threats of this nature, it's likely that they were able to track the suspect using a combination of digital forensics and tips from concerned fans. And on December 3rd, 2024, authorities would finally arrest the suspect on suspicion of obstructing business, and it's revealed that it was actually a 35-year-old man named Naomasa Kogishi who had been living in Kyoto, Japan. And just one day after his arrest, AnyColor would release an official statement confirming that he had been acting under a false belief. He was convinced that someone he personally held a grudge against was working at the company. It was in many ways a tragic misunderstanding and spiraled out of control, and the company would continue working with the police to press charges and hold him accountable, making it clear that what mattered then was keeping their staff, their talents, and their fans safe from anything like this happening again. And AnyColor would also highlight how the VTuber community supported them through this time, and near the end of the post they would add one final quote saying,
"In consideration of the impact on the investigation by the police and other investigative agencies, we're limiting the information we report and the scope of information we disclose."
Because of this, most of what happened to Naomasa after his arrest was kept private. This next case, however, didn't hide behind a screen, and he knew exactly where his victim was.
Lena's is so cute too. Oh my god, look at her little like...
It's November 1st, 2024. Camilla, a 25-year-old VTuber with over 280,000 followers on Twitch and more than 330,000 subscribers across her YouTube channels, is just having fun on a collab livestream with fellow YouTubers Vidal and Evil Nero on Vidal's Twitch channel. As they're casually talking in front of thousands of viewers, Evil Nero suddenly asks Camilla to perform clown tricks on stream for fun. But instead of answering, she doesn't say a single word, and her character strangely freezes in place.
But you're the ultimate clown, Camilla. Can you teach me some more tricks?
But just a few seconds later, Camilla suddenly starts talking again.
Sorry, let's just say in this humble abode, if there was someone like knocking on my window, how would you react?
Brushing it off as just a question about an imaginary scenario, Evil Nero, the AI, answers her in a sarcastic manner, with everyone not taking what Camilla said seriously.
I'd probably grab the nearest object and get ready to throw it at them. Then I'd ask whether they're a friend or foe.
But much to their surprise, Camilla doubles down by saying that someone actually just banged on her window, leaving her visibly startled.
Let's just say I'm in a house right now and someone just like pounded on my window.
But still, Camilla doesn't think much of it, and the stream continues for another hour, with the three of them hanging out and talking to fans. But once the stream ends, she decides to check the camera footage, only to find out that no one was outside her house at the time her window got banged on. Assuming it was just some random kid messing around, she lets the whole thing go, and nothing else happens for the rest of the day. The next day, however, in the middle of her stream, she suddenly hears a loud bang against her house, with the sound even echoing through the stream.
Oh my god, look at her little like...
Fearing that something bad might happen, or might have already happened, she quickly mutes her microphone and presses the panic button, which is an emergency alert device that contacts the police, and she rushes out her room to check if her mother's okay. Thankfully, she sees that her mom is safe, and it turns out that her mother's already looking through the cameras, saying that a man holding a sledgehammer is banging on their garage and trying to break into their house.
She was looking on the cameras and he had a sledgehammer. He had a sledge. He didn't look like he had any weapons, but he was trying to come in with his sledgehammer.
Without wasting any time, they go straight to where the firearms are stored and hide in a safe spot inside the house. While they're trying to stay quiet, however, her iPhone suddenly activates and starts trying to read out her location, likely triggered by an accidental voice command, causing her to scream in panic. She quickly shuts off her phone and goes completely silent, and all they can hear now is the man outside, screaming erratically. While this is happening, it turns out there were already police patrolling nearby, since there had been a rise in drunk drivers speeding and crashing in the area. And moments later, Camilla and her mom hear sirens getting closer, and as soon as they do, the man's shouting stops. The police arrive at their house and see what's happening, which prompts them to immediately arrest the man on the spot and take over the situation, making sure that Camilla and her mother are safe. When the officers ask if they're okay, it's clear that both of them are still shaken. They don't say much, still trying to process what just happened.
I'm really stupid. I muted my microphone because if there was something going on, I didn't want you guys to hear anything. Let's say something did happen and then you heard absolute catastrophe in the mic. I did not want that for people to listen to that. So I muted it in case anything happened.
And thinking about how close they were to being in serious danger, Camilla decides to pack her bags and tells her mother that they have to leave. But before they go, she gives her number to one of the police officers so she can be updated on who the man is and why he did this in the first place. And shortly after they find a place to stay, Camilla posts an update on Twitter saying,
"More info from the police to answer more questions. He's arrested. He admitted to planting a device in a gift he gave me."
It turns out the gift was handed to her at a VTuber fan convention, where the man had approached her in person just to give it to her. And on top of this, she also warns other VTubers to be safe with receiving presents, adding,
"Make sure you guys are checking convention gifts for tracking devices before taking them home with you, or you too could end up just like me."
Camilla then posts one final tweet saying she won't be returning home for a while. So instead, a family member would be escorted by an officer into the house to pack all the fan gifts into a large container and hand it over to the police, just to be safe and check for anything else before throwing it away. Sometime after this, she even talks about the impact it had on her during one of her live streams, which was now deleted, saying she's been stuck in the same nightmare every night as she keeps replaying everything that happened. Because of that, she would make the decision to stop accepting gifts from fans altogether, as well as attending any future meet and greets in real life. While she felt awful for doing this, especially after describing how happy she felt getting to hug and meet her friends, her community accepts that, with all of them understanding that this is the right thing to do. The man, however, didn't come out of it nearly as well and ends up getting exactly what he deserves. He's hit with multiple charges like stalking and attempted break-in and planting a tracking device. Unfortunately, his identity was never revealed, and while the legal outcome wasn't made public, there's every reason to believe he's not getting out of jail anytime soon. What comes next, however, is truly disturbing in all the wrong ways.
You do it! You get off to it! You use it in your thumbnails to bait your viewers to come watch your streams! That's what people watch you for, you freak!
Nux Taku is a 29-year-old Canadian VTuber with over 2 million YouTube subscribers. He became known for his highly energetic and exaggerated anime commentary and content reviews. And while most people saw him as one of those recognizable figures in the anime and VTuber community, his videos and eventually his actions would spiral into something much worse. Back in late 2019 to 2020, Nux content would for some reason turn away from anime and meme commentary and increasingly focus on more provocative videos. And this is around the time he would also begin running contests around the Rule 34 art, where people draw highly inappropriate adult versions of fictional characters, often with zero boundaries on who gets included. For your own sake, seriously, don't look it up. And around this time, he would also show up on streams of various VTubers, donating money with requests to act out suggestive and obsessive behavior. While not outright illegal, it's a disturbing pattern that only gets worse from here on out. Now, these provocative videos would get him a ton of success. With this in mind, Nux Taku would also launch one of his most popular series in the worst way possible, by showing other YouTubers and online personalities extremely explicit materials. These include videos involving which refers to non-consensual acts with animals, suggestive content featuring blood-related fictional characters, and even adult depictions of characters. Despite his attempts to censor it or bury it within his thumbnails, Canada strictly forbids the possession or distribution of explicit content involving younger people, whether real or animated. And yet Nux not only watched and possessed these materials, but also distributed them across his channel. By 2020, Nux then came into contact with an infamous NSFW artist known as Shadman, someone already banned on multiple platforms due to his disturbing content and a long list of public controversies. One of the most disturbing examples came in 2016, when Shadman drew an overly explicit image of Keemstar's real-life daughter, who was just 8 years old at the time. This post sparked immediate outrage and would go on to resurface years later as one of the most well-known controversies tied to his name. Even with this reputation though, the two would start exchanging messages. A year later, Nux would then start using very questionable artwork in his videos, some of it coming directly from Shadman. In one of those thumbnails, for example, he uses a piece of Shadman's collaborative comic with Belle Delphine, something many viewers instantly recognized and called out in the comments due to the artist's notorious reputation. But despite all of that backlash, Nux simply wouldn't respond. Instead, he'd be seen liking some of the comments that bring this up, and the image would stay up for quite a while, with nothing ever said or done. Later that same year, Nux would upload a reaction video to his second channel, one that would end up becoming one of his most viewed. It centered around a viral meme featuring Anka, a character from Animal Crossing, which blew up on TikTok after tons of people, including kids, started mimicking this dance. But what most people didn't realize at the time was that the original version of the meme was actually not safe for work. Nux even mentions how strange it is that kids are doing the dance now, but rather than say anything beyond that, he just brushed it off and starts talking about how good the music is. What makes it even worse is that the thumbnail he was using for this video was pulled directly from the explicit version of the dance. YouTube would inevitably step in and take the whole thing down for violating their rules about explicit content on their platform. But this wouldn't be the only thing Nux would be involved in. Around late 2021 and early 2022, Nux would again find himself caught in yet another controversy, this time involving a different VTuber named Bungo Taiga. It all started when Taiga was exposed for allegedly trying to obtain explicit photos from a year-old. And as soon as this information would surface, Nux would publicly shame him, even calling him a predator in front of his own audience. And this is where things get twisted. Taiga himself would respond to this by releasing a document he calls the exoneration document. In it, he doesn't just deny the allegations against him, but instead he also tries to turn the blame onto Nux himself. On his own stream, Taiga would claim that Nux's frequent use of content revolving around adult depictions of fictional younger people basically normalized this kind of content, making him think that this kind of behavior was okay in the first place.
Stop acting like it's the worst thing in the world. You do it. You do it. You do it. You get off to it. You use it in your thumbnails to bait your viewers to come watch your streams. That's what people watch you for, you freak.
Now surprisingly, this response would get him a ton of attention, and people would begin to question themselves whether Nux's content is one of the causes for this. Faced with the growing backlash and hate, Nux would eventually take back his previous statement, while also publicly admitting that calling him a predator is the biggest mistake of his career.
This was probably the biggest L of my career. To be honest, Bungo Taiga even leaked the DMs on his stream about me apologizing to him and stuff.
In July 2024, however, his past actions would be dug up once more, this time during a separate controversy involving Ava Chris Tyson from the MrBeast crew. During that time, a series of expose posts called the Shad Files would start spreading online, aiming to expose creators who had previously interacted with Shadman, and among the list was obviously Nux Taku. Now after the release of these files, Nux would immediately respond publicly, speaking out against Shadman and trying to distance himself from him.
It's the Shadman stuff. Okay, so I knew it was Lolly stuff. Okay, so Shadman takes Lolly to another level. So Shadman is a not-ish, ish fellow, okay? Not actually been necessarily, as far as I know, accused of shit. I know that there have been criminal stuff that's going on here.
He would also claim that his messages with them were not only one-sided, but that he also had no idea about the full extent of Shadman's work. But just like before, most people simply weren't buying it.
I just scrolled back in my DMs from, how old is this? 1 second. 2020 with Shadman, because he sent me some wild shit.
In the days that followed, online creators like Kuiman and Larix would start digging through Nux's videos, ultimately finding out that he seems to contradict everything he just said. Nux would make a video talking about how he came into contact with Shadman in the first place. However, Kuiman would post a tweet right after with a screenshot of Nux wanting to collaborate with Shadman with the caption,
"Why are you lying? You asked him to collab and got rejected in 2021. Wanna collab? No, but your heart's in the right place. Understandable, have a nice day. I'm here when you come around, devil emoji.
Even with the evidence of Nux being the one who reached out to Shadman, it wouldn't take long before Nux would respond again. In the video he made replying to this, he would claim that the collaboration was just him grilling Shadman, which basically means he was planning to confront Shadman rather than trying to collab with him.
People are making this as some sort of, I am supporting him and I'm trying my best to become friends with Shadman, this monster. Which is fucking stupid if you know my content at all. I troll confront people when I collab the same way you do, talking to Keemstar, on lolcow, and if you watch my videos, you know that.
But Larix would question him about this in a tweet saying,
"So you didn't know the extent of his then, but we're going to grill him at the same time. If you did get that collab, what would you grill Shad on? From what I remember, he was known as the guy who drew sex. You didn't know that?"
And Nux would respond by tweeting,
"I knew about the stuff and some of his art, like the beast with fictional etc. Definitely enough to grill the guy."
This, however, simply doesn't make any sense, since Nux had been using Shadman's work in his own thumbnails, some of which were only taken down later. Now, at the lowest point of his career, with dozens of clips and posts exposing him, Nux would simply decide to stop responding, likely hoping it would all get buried. But the backlash would only grow, as creators like Harmful Opinions and Nicandros would start compiling footage of his obsessive content and obscene material involving fictional. Harmful and Nicandros would also end up releasing a video in August of 2024, exposing a significant amount of Nux's hypocrisy. Not only did they disprove the idea that Nux was ever truly criticizing Shadman, Harmful would also point to one of Nux's thumbnails, which showed a highly disturbing and inappropriate piece of artwork, including a dog and a woman. Another thumbnail was also brought up, with Harmful explaining that a reverse image search would lead to an explicit adult site, where the image itself would contain violent and graphic themes. This huge amount of information was actually obtained from the Reddit account of someone who used to keep tabs in Nux's subreddit, and although this account has long been banned, the posts that are made on Nux's subreddit are still up, and they document a massive amount of explicit materials that Nux used for his thumbnails. But what really catched people's attention is that within the Reddit posts that Harmful shows, a white-haired anime girl is seen in the middle, and it was the avatar of a well-known VTuber by the name of Gargura. Keep in mind that this was the same girl that was in the image with the tag imminent. On top of that, it turns out that Nux had previously mentioned Gura in one of his past videos.
There's lollies, which I have absolutely nothing against. I don't think anyone has anything against lollies, okay? Like Chibidoki or Megumin from Konosuba or Gura.
This heavily implies that Nux was very well aware of the image's nature, especially since he previously described Gargura as a loli and had used similar imagery knowingly. And he would even go as far as saying this:
"Nothing has anything against lollies. It's lolly that's the gray zone. This guy's pinned tweet that he retweeted is this, all right? Look, it's lolly stuff. That's a line, all right? Lolly stuff, that's the gray zone, not actual but the gray zone."
Which simply isn't true, considering that in Canada, where he lives, this kind of stuff is basically just illegal. Now, Nux never faced any legal consequences for what happened, and he continues to upload videos to this day. But for many, his name is now tied to one of the most disturbing and controversial reputations on the platform. Unlike him though, this next individual took advantage of multiple people.
"You held a stream in which I thought you would admit our relationship. Instead, you did quite the opposite, saying with a righteous and dignified attitude that you are single."
Kyoka, also known as the founder and leading talent of a VTuber agency called Overidea, was a Japanese VTuber best known on the Bilibili platform, where he had over 1 million followers. He was already a major figure in the VTuber community, especially after landing collaborations with Nijisanji English, again one of the biggest agencies in the scene, including talents like Vox Akuma and Fulgur Ovid. At the time, his career simply wasn't showing any signs of slowing down. In 2023, however, all of that would come crashing down when someone going by the name of Bing Tang released a 1-hour expose that would turn everything he built against him and reveal who he really was behind the camera. In early 2021, Kyoka and Bing Tang, who's the Chinese VTuber and someone Kyoka's romantically involved with, are gaining a ton of momentum in their careers as a funny and entertaining couple, and even off-stream they would grow closer by spending most of their nights on their phone talking for hours. Until during one of these sessions, Kyoka would suddenly say,
"My balls are huge, do you want to see it?"
And he would then proceed to send an unsolicited selfie of himself wearing nothing but underwear. Now, although Kyoka and Bing Tang are a couple, sending something something this uncalled for would still catch Bingtang very off guard. In East Asian relationship culture, especially in the early stages, these actions can still come across as inappropriate or uncomfortable, even between partners. So confused, Bingtang assumed that he's just doing this under the impression that foreigners are more enthusiastic and unrestrained, and just brushes it off. And their relationship would continue to develop, and so would their careers, with much of that growth coming from Bingtang actually, as she would help Kyoka connect with major Chinese streamers, finding artists for his live character model, and even letting him borrow a huge amount of money just for him to live stream and play gacha. However, it turns out that none of those favors, especially the money, were ever paid back. Despite the fact that he was more popular than ever, his career kept growing, and so did the amount of money he made, with more and more donations coming from his female fans actually. Now one night, Bingtang would actually tune into a stream and realize that Kyoka was actually using the same kind of suggestive conversations and behaviors they used to do over the phone to flirt with his female fans, and she would confront him about it, with Kyoka simply responding with,
"If you're a public figure, you need to be more mature about this. You can't hinder my work just because you don't like it. My job is to be an idol, and an idol is to create a beautiful dream for the audience."
And he would take this very seriously, because in November of 2021, Kyoka, now at the peak of his career, would announce that he's currently single, hoping to appeal to his female fans. While behind the scenes, he would still be in a relationship with Bingtang the entire time. But despite that, some of the fans were already starting to question whether he was telling the truth, because it just seemed so sudden. Annoyed, he would instead criticize a portion of his audience, calling out what he refers to as his girlfriend fans for being too sensitive, and claiming that they should just trust that he's not in a relationship. But every time, as soon as the stream would end, Kyoka would send a message to Bingtang, saying stuff like,
"I love you, my wife."
He would manipulate both sides, his fans as well as his actual girlfriend. And this kind of manipulation simply wouldn't stop. And over time, Bingtang would actually start blaming herself, saying she was the one causing all of this tension. Now because of this drama, his popularity would gradually decline, and he would decide to take it out on the one person who helped him the entire time. He would start yelling at Bingtang, telling her that it's all her fault, but he would quickly go back to acting sweet and telling her nice things whenever he wanted to initiate inappropriate conversations over the phone. He would start calling her his wife again. This made Bingtang very confused and felt like something was seriously wrong. So she would turn to a friend going by the name of Pari, who would end up telling her something she didn't expect at all.
Kyoka's like this. He's someone who will sacrifice others for his own benefit.
And Bingtang would find out that Kyoka had actually been in a similar relationship with Pari before. It was all just a big game to him. Now the moment he realized that they actually talked with each other, he would immediately start lashing out again, telling her to never speak to Pari ever. But it's around this time that Kyoka's actions would finally start catching up to him. Some of the fans who used to support him were starting to pull away, especially the ones he once called his girlfriend fans. And a lot of it had to do with his personality behind the scenes, since the drama started to leak out. But this would simply make him treat Bingtang even worse than before. Whenever he would see VTubers who were more popular than him, he would get jealous and start saying inappropriate things behind their backs just to make him feel better. And at the same time, he would start messaging a bunch of female streamers in private. He would check if they're having a bad day, ask them if they want to talk, and slowly get closer to them over time. And just like that, a lot of them would start growing attached to him, texting with him constantly, getting on voice calls, and even sending photos and sharing personal information. But not long after, Bingtang would receive a message from Kyoka, where he admits that he's been saving screenshots of his private conversations with these girls the entire time, just to see how she would react, and getting a thrill whenever she showed any signs of jealousy. He tells her that he never actually cared about any of them, and that it was all just a way to mess with her emotions and keep her from leaving. Some of these messages he shared included personal details the girls had shared with him, like their home addresses, schools, workplaces, and private experiences, and even company secrets. And after collecting them, Bingtang would just simply watch as Kyoka would begin saying inappropriate and hateful things about the girls behind their backs. Now everything between Bingtang and Kyoka would start falling apart, but they were still talking regularly. Bingtang simply couldn't let go, and during those late night calls, he would start pressuring Bingtang to do suggestive things with him until morning. And eventually he would tell her that he had an obsession with something called NTR, which is a Japanese term that refers to a genre where a character's romantic partner is unfaithful or stolen by another person. And he would start saying disturbing things about how she's constantly surrounded and adored by male fans, and how he liked that. Now despite despite the backlash he was already facing, Kyoka would still go as far as hiring an exotic performance person, and after Bingtang actually found out, he would go into explicit detail about his time with the girl and the services he paid for. And this is the point where Bingtang would suddenly break. She would say that her stomach felt sick and she would break down completely. So throughout May of 2022, she would decide to cancel her streams. Now, as time progressed, people started forgetting about what happened between the two, especially Kyoka. So his popularity from the girlfriend fans would suddenly start bouncing back up, leading up to his birthday. And because of the drama he had, some of his most loyal fans would begin to go to the extremes and attack Bingtang and her family out of jealousy, sending malicious and even life-threatening messages. But despite Bingtang's situation, she would often cry and apologize to him, even when he was the one doing all of these twisted things to her. Now, it's just a few hours before his birthday party, and Kyoka would actually invite Bingtang to his livestream party, and she would ask him if he wanted a birthday present. And Kyoka would respond to her by saying,
"Send me 100,000 Chinese yuan,"
which by the way is nearly $14,000. And Bingtang would simply agree and send the money through a super chat, a paid message that appears publicly on Kyoka's stream. But the thing is, as soon as the fans see this donation, some of them suddenly accuse her of trying to steal the spotlight, since it was his birthday stream after all. And the insults and messages she receives would only get worse. And so he would refund the money she sent him for some reason. But Bingtang decides to step up and simply says how horribly he treated her. But he just simply says,
"I paid you back the money. What are you still struggling with? Do you know how much I sacrificed to protect you?"
Meanwhile, the verbal attacks from Kyoka's fans escalate even further, and Bingtang's own fans, along with regular viewers, start realizing what's actually going on. At this point, Kyoka also changes his agent, and this is when his girlfriend fans, the ones who were willing to do anything for him, start turning on each other, arguing over whether Bingtang was really at fault. And on October 7th, 2022, Bingtang simply can't take it anymore and uploads a video on Bilibili detailing everything Kyoka had done. And while it's still unclear if he's done the same to others, she ends the video by saying,
"These 3 years of my early 20s, the best 3 years of my youth, were giving to a scumbag."
Now, shortly after, Kyoka would host an apology stream on the same platform, with over 35,000 people watching the whole thing. But just after that, both Bingtang's expose and Kyoka's stream would get taken down, and soon after, both of their accounts would get suspended, likely due to the platform's strict policies. This next person, however, was taken advantage of at every single point.
My content is 18 plus but wasn't fully reinforced the way I thought it was. I broke my own rules hard and didn't want it to be, but I did. I want to throw up and forget this.
It's January 2022. Mauzi Banharu is a young VTuber who's still legally a and she reaches out to another creator named Ja Waffle, better known online as Waffy. Now, Waffy has built her presence streaming VR chat on Twitch, calling herself a Neko-made VTuber, with a personality that's as flashy as her character model, and content she openly says is made for adults. Despite this, Haru isn't looking for anything more than streaming advice and a new friend, and Waffy actually responds to her by sending her a link to her Discord server. Now, before letting her in though, she asks how old Haru is, and when Haru tells her she's Waffy hesitates for a moment, saying her content is made for adults, but still the conversation keeps going and says,
"You're fine, just be careful. A lot of people in the VTuber community say that if you're a get the f out. I'm not picky, but I'm just helping you by giving you a warning too."
And Haru is allowed to join the server nonetheless, and things are surprisingly normal at first. The conversations mostly are about tips on how to get better at streaming, with Haru even offering to draw her some artwork just to show appreciation. It isn't until late March of 2022, just 2 months after they first meet, that Waffy starts to show what kind of person she really is. In this conversation she asks,
"Well, this one is somewhat or a really odd question. Don't take it in a bad way. Haru butt drawings? Might have?"
Haru then tries to clarify what she meant, and Waffy follows it up by saying,
"You have any drawings of your character's butt?"
And while it might seem harmless since it's just a fictional character, there's something important to keep in mind. Haru's VTuber model ages with her, so when Waffy asks for that kind of drawing, she's essentially asking to see what a character looks like from behind, fully exposed. Not long after that, Haru casually asks what Waffy's been drawing, and with zero hesitation, Waffy responds,
"You sitting on my face, blush emoji."
And just a few days later, even after Haru clearly tells her that she's Waffy continues sending inappropriate comments. She replies with,
"Ah, okay, I'm safe. Partly I thought you were more of a and you are to me since I'm 23. Yeah, I don't seem 23, don't I? I may seem very when I asked you about art of you on me. I know and seems f***ed up, but I mean no harm and don't take it in a bad way, if you get me.
On March 23rd, 2022, their conversations would start turning into something even more indecent.
Drooling emoji, hehe. Let me guess, striped panty Haru. Yes, I love that stuff. I want it all over me.
And after that, she asked something even worse.
Odd question. Are you okay with ERP? If you don't want to do it, it's fine. Sorry, and nothing not safe for work. I mean just etchy, if that's what you're wondering.
With terms like ERP and etchy, it's clear that Wafi isn't just trying to talk about art or streaming. She wants to roleplay something suggestive with Haru. And since Haru obviously can't fully grasp the situation she's in, she simply agrees. Shortly after that, Wafi starts going into more detail about what kind of ERP she wants to do. She introduces a fixation where Haru is imagined as massive while she stays small, and this quickly becomes the focus of their chats. These kind of conversations would go on for about a month, and they keep getting more intense in the worst way possible. In early April of 2022, Wafi then admits to doing inappropriate things to herself during these roleplays with Haru, someone 6 years younger than her. And just when it seems like things couldn't get worse, she also starts sending drawings of Haru's character with her behind fully exposed. And less than a week later, despite everything she's already done, Wafi asks Haru for a picture of her butt. But what Haru doesn't realize is that she's not talking about her model, she means her real body. And Haru agrees. And right after that, Wafi tries to act like it's harmless, saying,
all I'm saying, be careful though. Not to me, but like in general. I'm not harmful. I'm straight honest and blunt when saying things. I don't mean them in a harmful way and won't lead to any more hardcore. Do you get what I mean? I just feel cautious about asking that since I had friends remove me before. That's why I'm scared asking. Sorry, rant.
And with how much Haru trusts her, she ends up sending multiple explicit photos of herself, with Wafi responding in very inappropriate ways, flooding the messages with drooling emojis, for example. And months later, in late 2022, Wafi would take things even further. On a live stream, she put together a so-called tier list. And weirdly enough, she tries to get someone on the stream to ask Haru for a submission. Now, it's never clear whether she's referring to Haru's character or her real body, but it's disturbing nonetheless. And someone who I'll introduce later would call her out for it, directly confronting her over how far she took things on stream. But instead of owning up to it, Wafi simply brushed it off, blaming alcohol and her meds for how she acted. Now, despite everything Wafi's already done to her, Haru would admit that she has feelings for her. And at the time, she actually says this only because she's emotionally attached and just doesn't want Wafi to leave. But Wafi would actually decide to turn it down, saying,
the thing is though, you're younger than me, so sadly we can't date. Like legally, I can't date you. 23 minus 18 equals 5 years older than I am. And I looked it up and I believe 5 years isn't okay for dating. Basically dating it, if you get me.
Now, despite this seemingly good message, considering how long she's been flirting and role-playing with her, this makes absolutely no sense. She acts like she's been drawing the line the whole time, when she already crossed it months ago. Wafi then tells Haru to wait until she turns 20 so they can actually date, as if that somehow makes any of it okay. Now, after turning 19, Haru noticed that Wafi barely talked to her anymore, and it made her feel like she didn't matter, like she'd just been tossed aside. And so years later, on January 12, 2023, after her friends tell her it was a mistake to stay with Wafi in the first place, Haru finally listens and cuts all contact, saying that looking back, she feels disgusted by everything Wafi did to her and to her character. And more than a year later, on August 4th, 2024, Haru finally releases a document exposing months of inappropriate behavior from Wafi, not only toward herself, but several others. In her post, she wrote,
when I was a VTuber by the name of Ja Waffle did things with me that were highly inappropriate and has done things to other people as well. This is our story, so please read it all the way through.
But the story with Waffle doesn't end there. Not long after Haru walked away, Wafi set her sight on someone else, a person we'll call B. B first came across Wafi during one of her streams, and this is how their first interaction began.
Beginning was me donating $20 and her flirting with me. Then she begged for money and gave me special treatment in the stream. I helped solve her botting issues, like 12 times, and recommended solutions for all her issues. Got mod access while still being begged for money as I managed her TikTok. Then one day she got tired of me and replaced me for relationship matters, but not financial ones. So she still came for me asking for money every week until she realized it was hopeless.
Even after B says their relationship had already ended, Wafi was still asking for favors.
Hey, can you send the collar? Just wondering. Sure, once I'm out of the hospital, I'll probably get the diamonds taken off, but a gold collar should be good enough. Oh, The diamonds were almost 3k, hun, and considering I don't really understand what our relationship is, I'd like to repurpose them. I was hoping they'd be on there, but if it make you comfy, to then fine. I'm just stressed as f and struggling. I don't know, sorry. Well, I'd be fine with it if we were dating, or even if the puff art got finished, but you kinda cancelled everything you were getting done for me, so I'm still not even sure I should give it to you at all. I'll tell Puff to finish it.
It turns out though that Haru and B weren't the first. One of the earlier victims was another we'll call A, someone who actually met Wafi back in 2021, long before Haru ever came into the picture. It's not exactly clear how the two of them met, but at the time, A was only while Wafi was already in her early 20s and had made it clear that her content was for mature audiences. And yet Wafi started urging A to open up about her personal life. A, still young and not fully aware of what's appropriate to share, ends up telling her things that should have stayed private, and that actually led to Wafi bringing up A's personal life in front of everyone during one of her Minecraft streams, going as far as revealing that A's parents had passed away. A would confront her about this more than once, telling her to stop, but Wafi simply wouldn't listen. And things get even weirder when Wafi would start complimenting A's voice, saying how hot it was. And what would start as casual praise would slowly turn into something more disturbing, with Wafi even making inappropriate art about her. And that's exactly when A would start pulling away. And she was actually the one warning Haru about Wafi when they first started talking. And unfortunately, this isn't the point where it ends either. A VTuber who goes by the name R would also end up getting dragged into Wafi's mess in early 2023. It turns out that Wafi had been spreading false rumors about him, claiming he was manipulating people into joining his so-called harem, which she described as a group of women all romantically interested in him. And when R found out about that, he would immediately confront her, telling her that it's not true and that the rumors really upset him. But instead of clearing it up, Wafi would simply double down. She would deny saying anything harmful and try to justify it by saying,
I just warned people that I don't know if you will get closer to them to join your polygamy from what I've heard.
But R would call her out directly, repeating what she said word for word. And she would respond with,
this is making me pissed and I will block you because this is honestly making me shake and uncomfy. You are overthinking and shit. This is the internet. Stuff like this will happen.
Wafi would also start making offensive jokes about people with physical disabilities. In particular, she would mock people in wheelchairs by using inappropriate words during her livestream skits. But after R confronted her about it, she would simply say,
I see no hate to it, and it's no harm to anyone or such to it. People who do take it as a slur from the video can just fuck off.
Then she tries to get out of the situation again by saying that she's had a couple of rough days and just needs sleep. But this isn't still the worst thing she's done. On April 11, 2023, Wafi is caught saying things that are deeply disturbing during a Discord conversation with an unknown user. They start talking about fictional characters that look like underage girls. And during the chat she says,
in general, lowly stuff is just child but not real. But everything is bad in any country. So I mean, if it isn't real life, then I'm fine because it's cute and hot, if you get me.
After that, she goes even further, sending several messages openly fantasizing about fictional young girls and even showing off part of her collection of those kinds of images. Then, about a year later, just after Haru released her document, a former moderator of Wafi's stream would come forward with a statement of their own.
Ex-mod for Wafi here. I had zero idea they even did this stuff, and I'm still in shock from the whole thing. Please, if you decide to tune into Wafi's stream, keep in mind that this person has hurt a lot of people. The type of stuff they used to do is downright disgusting. Their Discord is specifically 18+, but they also allow That was one of the many things that gave me a feeling that something was up.
They go on to say that the users on the Discord server had been posting explicit artwork of Ellen Joe, a clearly underage character from Zenless Zone 0. And instead of removing these posts, Wafi actively allowed it. And according to them, there were a number of things that just didn't sit right, whether it was on her server or on Twitch. She rarely enforced the age restriction, and while there was technically an ID protection system in place for NSFW channels, it was quite easy to bypass. And to anyone who ever saw a minor interacting with her, they leave one final warning.
Please warn them, keep them safe. Take a look at Haru's document in the quote retweet for further context.
Now, after this whole thing blew up, Wafi would finally decide to respond, posting a statement of her own.
I would like to address the recent tweet regarding my past actions. I acknowledge that much of what was stated is true. In 2022, when I was 23, I exhibited immaturity and did not fully understand the implications of my actions, which in retrospect were both illegal and inappropriate. Looking back at at the direct messages I sent to Haru, I realized that my communication at the time was inappropriate. I recognized the impact of my actions, and I'm committed to personal change for the better from the actions I did to them. I do not wish to use this as my excuse or a crutch. I am autistic, I have Asperger's syndrome, and yes, I am higher functioning, but I've faced challenges in understanding social norms, and during that period of me talking to Haru, I did not know it was okay. I am deeply remorseful for the harm I caused, and I want to empathize that I am actively working on bettering myself.
And the statement continues.
While I do not expect anyone to accept my apology, I want my efforts to change to be acknowledged. These are mistakes I will learn from, and I'm seeking help to ensure I evolve into a better person. As I take time away from streaming to focus on my healing, I hope to return with a renewed sense of purpose. This experience has left a lasting impact on me. I am committed to growing from it. Thank you for your understanding, and I appreciate your patience during this process.
Then, on the afternoon of August 7th, 2024, Woffy would return with another tweet. She writes,
"My better response,"
and links to a second apology document, posted just 2 days after the first one had been deleted. Compared to the original, this one is even shorter, just a single page, and most of it reads more like a stream of emotion than a proper response to what she's been accused of. In it, she writes,
"I am a disappointment to everyone I trusted. I broke my own rules hard. I didn't want it to be, but I did. I want to throw up and forget this. Some people can change. It takes time, so please give me that. Finally, I want to say again, I am sorry, Haru, and everyone I hurt."
Now, all of her social and online activity would completely disappear. And considering that many people have been given awareness about her, it's clear that her name won't be coming back ever again, or at least won't in the near future. What comes next, however, is someone who took on many names and has been repeatedly exposed for predatory behavior within the VTuber community.
If I remember correctly, like over 100 videos or pics of girls doing things. That's not true. I've only had that done with like a few girls.
In 2016, Jose Rodriguez, a 23-year-old man from Brooklyn, was arrested after being caught soliciting explicit acts from a 13-year-old we'll call Sophie on a game called Minecraft. It turned out he'd been talking to them for a while, and after getting Sophie's Skype account, he enticed the girl to perform inappropriate acts for him over the app, which included pictures and video calls. Sometime later, Sophie's father looked through her tablet, and to his horrible shock, found disgusting interactions between the two, and immediately reported it to the local sheriff's office and the New York Police Department. Investigators eventually received the go signal to arrest Josel after tracking his location to Brooklyn, but once they raided his house, they found over 100 videos and images of suspected illegal content involving. Soon after his arrest, Joseph was held on a cash bail of over $30,000 at Rikers Island in New York and was sentenced to 10 years of probation. At first, this story seems like a closed case. However, 2 years later, in June 2017, Milky, a transgender Minecraft content creator who's formerly known as Vidal Rose and Pumpkinite, would join a multiplayer series called The 100 Baby SMP, where creators would roleplay building virtual families and raising 100 kids in-game. This series would include well-known figures at the time, such as Moondustbry and PandaFire11, which helped drive a ton of engagement to her channel. With Milky's channel rapidly growing, she would start getting a lot of online friends, with two of the most relevant for later being Smarty's Cringe and Roxanne Tux. And soon enough, they would start gather a presence in the 100 Baby SMP community and would rack in a lot of viewers. However, behind the cameras and away from the public eye, Milky wasn't the friendly Minecraft content creator people knew her as. She was actively messaging people who were not of age and repeatedly asking them to send selfies. In one conversation, for example, Milky, whose username is deleted user in this case, says,
"I mean, I just wanna see a pic lol, if you don't mind of course. I hate selfies XD, the moment I take one I'm like, so take it, send it, then delete it. Simple lol."
Alongside this, Whimsy Kitsune, the person who organized that SMP that Milky was a part of, would find it highly suspicious when it comes to how old she actually was, as she only put her age as 18+ on the community's public information and never how old she specifically was. Now, after this information and especially the screenshot spread among the content creators, Smarty posted a warning tweet shortly after Milky blocked her, and more details were revealed. She also confirmed the allegations that Milky was in fact kind of a pervert, which led to Milky deactivating all of her online accounts following the exposure about her. She supposedly left the internet entirely. While many thought this was the end of Milky, especially with all of her online activity gone, they were terribly mistaken. In late 2018, Rux makes a video exposing a lot more information about Milky, after finding out that another account, going by the name of Tired Ellie, had been acting almost exactly the same. One person who interacted with them says,
"I've been trying to become friends with Ellie, and she's been asking me to show my face twice, acting really weird, and I was wondering if that was normal for her to act like this.
The screenshot shows,
"You should take a selfie. No, I'm not in a mood, but I want to see you in a call. Sorry, maybe another time, because I'll have my computer again soon. I guess we can call with just voice then. Can you still take selfies though?
Another user called Tatum also shares the experience with Ellie, saying,
She asked me to undress in a call once, which I also said no to. Just asked for pictures of my face, a ton, and for other than that, nothing else really.
And when others would inevitably confront her about these actions, Ellie would respond with,
Congratulations, I see that. So what? It's the face. It's not gonna kill anyone. And I stopped already, so either drop it or leave me alone.
Sometime after that, Smarties also posts a second warning tweet, this time with more details about Milky.
Back in late November/early December, I posted a warning about someone who went by the name of iMilky. She has hurt a great deal of the community, and it came to a point where we even had to get the authorities involved and call the police. After I posted my original warning involving her, she got a great deal of backlash, which is reasonable considering how many people she's affected and what she's done. It drove her out of the community, and she backed away for a while, until she recently returned under the name Tired Ellie.
Smarty continues by saying that Milky, or Ellie, has asked countless individuals for revealing pictures, as well as pressing them to do inappropriate things. This includes asking for private images, flashing her, making suggestive requests, and more. She also says that Milky has given out several ages, ranging from all the way to 25, which makes her come across as a predator, especially considering how often she targets people closer to age when asking them to do these disgusting things. Not only this, but Milky also supposedly forced people into situations where she threatened to harm herself if they wouldn't agree to date her. And whenever Milky would get called out, she would just deny all of it, saying there's no real proof behind any of these accusations against her. But even after all of that denial and all the excuses, her newest alias, Tired Ellie, would also eventually be chased off the internet. However, in August of 2018, a VR chat mute Twitch streamer by the name of Kurinoko would suddenly show up, and not long after, many of the people would find out that this person was actually also Milky. And not only that, but they also began digging up Milky's real identity and discovered in horror that she was reportedly the exact same person as Joselle Rodriguez, who was the convicted predator mentioned in the beginning. And this blows up on the internet, and Milky tries to deny and clear all of the facts, but another DM immediately gets leaked after, showing that she still has plans to return to her Milky persona. And although Milky, or Kurinoko, would vanish from the internet once again, many others would still continue to track her movements, which consisted of a lot of other alt accounts that suddenly popped up. At this point, many people assumed that this would be the end of Milky's career on the internet, despite how many accounts they would create. But again, around 2019 to 2020, she would still somehow manage to rise from all of this. To get to the bottom of how this became possible, Rux, the person who originally exposed Milky, actually changed their name to Lumi Starbun, and shockingly had various controversies including doxing, transphobia, and even faking their own death. And despite all of this, in late 2019, Lumi would make an art piece dedicated to iMilky with a caption saying,
I may have messed up my life yesterday, but I'm glad to have my best friend back. Thank you for the support at iMilky. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me, and I'm sorry for hurting you. I swear I will do better.
This post alone would quickly alert countless people to Milky's sudden reappearance, who would come back to Twitter and YouTube with a VR chat focused channel with over 600 subscribers. And as soon as the people started actually noticing that she came back, they all also came across a video of Milky online, responding and apologizing for the things she's done. In this video, however, she doesn't admit to anything she's actually done. Milky first states that she suspects the authorities had lied when they claimed that she was caught with over 100 suspected images and videos of highly obscene materials of, and according to her, she only had a few files of those instead. Milky also adds by noting that the police had never showed her the illegal materials on a computer. And although some may argue that this isn't part of the police procedure, this is what she says.
When the cops came and got me, they were like, oh, we're confiscating your computer, and we found a whole bunch of stuff. They never actually showed me anything. They didn't show me any pictures, they didn't show me any videos, like they didn't show me anything.
She then claims that she's changed, even while continuing to ask for selfies, explicit photos, and inappropriate roleplay. Afterwards, she also expresses depression and anxiety, seemingly to gain sympathy. There's also an attempt to justify her actions, saying she doesn't have control of something in her that's causing all of this.
Because it was something that happened. At the time I had no control over. Some of you may think I'm stupid for saying that, but I'm being 100% honest here. There was something in me at that time that I just couldn't control. And it's some whole other thing. I know people won't believe me, so I won't bother going into it.
She then talks about deserving not just a second, but a third and fourth and even a fifth chance.
everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves another chance. Some people, they mess up a few times. I'm one of those people, but no one's perfect.
In the summer of 2020, Milky would return to her Twitter with a flood of tweets. She admits to the horrible things she did and asks for another chance, reminding everyone that she's human too. But just as quickly as she came back, Milky's activity would again completely stop. And it definitely wasn't for a good reason. In late 2020, Rux would drop a bombshell of an expose again, revealing that Milky had allegedly done it again and again, and this time using a new account.
This is Milky, a known who's been arrested for having 100+ images of child. I was friends with them, but it looks like they're still continuing, so I ended it. And they got mad when I found them again.
Rux also raised awareness by showing Voidyne's Discord name, who they claim is actually Milky. Under her name of Voidyne, Milky now uses a mute AI character who streams in VR. iMilky's channel has now been deleted, and her online presence was never seen again, at least not under iMilky, with her probation ending in 2026. Next, let's talk about the online art community, who's home to some very interesting people. Puppy-chan was an online artist who was incredibly popular throughout the 2010s. He has gone by many names and pronouns, but is mostly recently going by Salem, which is what we'll call him. Salem starts his online art career in 2016 at the age of He becomes known for his drawings of anthropomorphic characters, aka animals with human traits, and because of this, he gains a following in the furry community. At first, his art has a unique and distinct style, which is what makes him stand out, but as the years go on, Salem's art style would slowly change. His characters would become more suggestive, with exaggerated curves, and by 2020, his art style would look completely different than it once was. Still, his following steadily grows, but despite this, he still shows insecurities, often asking his audience for reassurance, but it goes way deeper than just wanting validation. Salem describes his own childhood as,
I've went through a lot of childhood trauma, such as my sister hitting me and verbally being mean to me, experiencing racism, and being bullied in my school for my autistic behavior.
In June of 2020, NSFW tweets from Salem's private account are leaked. On this account, he posted graphic art with explicit captions and other inappropriate thoughts. Now, at the time, Salem was seemingly allowing anyone into his account, which means that there were also adults seeing all of these inappropriate tweets from a small human, which a lot of people found both dangerous and problematic. Now, he had previously addressed this problem, but as it circulated again, he became incredibly upset and said,
being talked about or called out is now a huge trigger for me from all the trauma I've experienced. Please don't screenshot me or try to do this, and just talk to me, please.
Now, after all of this negative attention he received for this, he would make an attempt to leave this earth, but luckily this attempt would fail, but it's all too soon when something similar happens. Salem turns 18 in November, and his own friend, Bada, calls him out for another NSFW private account, except this time it's worse. Bada explains that Salem, once again, wasn't careful about who he let into his account, which included small humans this time. By allowing them into this account, he exposed them to inappropriate art and content. Now, he would claim that this was unintentional, later tweeting,
I had an NSFW account which started as a vent, so there were small humans on there. I changed it to a NSFW. I irresponsibly promoted it on my main account, and small humans followed because my following is full of them. I was told this and I got really angry. I started to take my anger out on them by saying I hate small humans sometimes. I exposed them to content that I need to be held accountable for.
Now, after this call out, Salem would attempt to leave this earth again, blaming Bada for his actions, which resulted in people actually harassing Bada. Now, Salem again is unsuccessful, and the next day comes back to explain what exactly happened. He apologizes to Bada and his audience, saying,
a few hours ago I threatened and tried to leave this earth. I should have called for help instead of dumping that on my audience. It was triggering to everyone. Then the harassment with Bada, blaming her for my leaving this earth, is beyond disgusting and just cruel. She didn't do anything to me, just held me accountable.
He concludes this by saying,
I will delete that account and will never post my NSFW content on any social media platform again.
Now, in the wake of this, on the same day, another upsetting accusation would emerge. A user posed that while they were still a small human, Salem's partner had tried to pressure them into a polyamorous relationship, and while not directly Salem's fault, it doesn't look great after the controversy. Now, this would result into Salem taking a brief break after this to work on his mental health, but he would return shortly in January of 2021, claiming to be better and on medication. But despite what he says, his post would tell a different story. He would start getting into arguments and constantly threaten to extinguish himself when called out. And while this may be unhealthy behavior, it's nothing compared to some of the other claims he makes throughout the year. Like for example claiming that it's his destiny to be a martyr. The most notable instance of his unhealthy behavior is when Salem creates a gender-swapped goth version of Garfield called Gothfield, a concept that would become massively popular, and other artists of course would make their own version. Now over time a lot of the artists would actually stop crediting Salem as the creator, which would in turn really upset him, so he would send his fans to harass any artists who don't credit his idea. And when he got criticized for that, he again threatened to OD, but this time he had a new perspective. He believed that he will survive this attempt and says,
"I will do this because I am God, his disciple."
Now he fails once more, and when he comes back, he suggests that he may have DID or multiple personalities, blaming some of his past behavior on what he calls the crazy one. Still to this day, he identifies as having this disorder. In 2022, Salem then brands his account as 18+ and would start again posting NSFW stuff, and doesn't do much to discourage young people from interacting with this art, which people notice and again criticize. But all of these controversies seem like nothing compared to what happens a few months later. March 29, a 15-year-old girl named Green accuses Salem of doing inappropriate things with him. Green says that Salem blocked him without any explanation, and now that they are no longer friends, he wants to reveal what Salem did to him. And a tweet on Salem's private account would actually explain the situation.
"I followed this one artist who's a small human. They call me mom, talk about around me, and even found my NSFW account and started showing/saving my suggestive pics from there. They make me so uncomfortable, but they're like a mentally unstable young person."
And we see a screenshot of their message from March 2nd, showing this kind of conversation.
"I want to draw suggestive art, but maybe a locked account to post that stuff and only let trusted followers see it? That's not enough, you see. I want to post it on my main, like how I did on my old account, but a bit less suggestive." "Oh, then you can do it. I see other young artists do it. Just try not to show too much skin or overly suggestive poses. I don't want creepy adults preying on you. What are some examples? I should know about like how much skin is too much and what poses are too suggestive, like showing boobs or ass popping out clothes, or showing a pose where the boobs or ass is the main focus."
Not only does Salem encourage Green to post suggestive art on their account, when he eventually decides he's uncomfortable with their relationship, Salem pushes Green away and then completely cuts him off. Now he tries to diffuse things by speaking to Green and working things out, but still receives criticism for encouraging that kind of thing in the first place. Salem would eventually admit that he was wrong by saying,
"After that, I have not sent messages like this, only become more distant and annoyed. I wish I did the mature thing by talking to this artist about my boundaries and then slowly cutting off, but instead I blocked him."
The other allegation is about Salem encouraging Green to call him mom.
"Green thought I encouraged him to call me mom, which I did not. I only hearted a reply he sent me which had the word in it. I am uncomfortable with that word, especially now with my true gender identity."
Now despite that, he doesn't shed the label of a and this isn't even the end of it. On April 22nd, a Twitter account called Kung Fu Revi is created. However, when they post their own art, it has an eerily similar style. It doesn't take long for people to figure out that this account is Salem attempting to disguise himself. People accuse him of cultural appropriation of the username and the way the user types, seemingly hoping to convince people he's Asian. At first he defends himself and says,
"On my newer account, I just like to talk how I do normally IRL. As for the Kung Fu layout, I like Kung Fu movies. That's literally it."
But despite that, he abandons that account. Now Salem is still active on Tumblr and Blue Sky and has now rebranded under the username WolfTinger666 and shed the Puppy-chan persona. And as chaotic as Salem's saga is, it is not as unique as you think. The next person we're covering shows shockingly similar behavior to Salem.
If people came to you asking if we had please do not say we did. People on Kiwi farms are trying to say I you because of loose proof that they had.
For nearly 2 years, the internet watched the rapid rise and collapse of a Twitter artist known as Francis. At an alarming rate, Francis went from meme creator to one of the most mocked people online. And it all began with just a few brushstrokes and Microsoft Paint. It's October 2023, and Francis makes a new Twitter account called Fallen Chungus. The next month, he starts posting a webcomic. It's simple, just 2 panels poking fun at how internet culture affects the way we react to things. One character states,
"Yeah, so I went to visit my friend."
And the other one interrupts with,
"Bro visited his friends."
It quickly takes off and becomes one of the most popular memes on Twitter. Francis' follower count rises fast as different versions of the meme spread, most of which also mock internet culture and toxic online behavior. But little did he know that these silly jokes were a grim predictor of his future. On January 22nd, 2024, Francis addresses screenshots that allegedly show him being a chaser, someone who objectifies trans people in an inappropriate way. In the screenshot, he frequently focuses on trans women's bodies, referencing watching adult material specifically of them, and how he dislikes other women. He even references that he does this, but not wanting to be considered a chaser. He defends himself, saying,
"This image surfaced last year, after a weird period where a lot of my close trans friends were going through so I tried to be an ally and failed miserably. This image was compiled by a group of transphobic trolls."
Due to the backlash, he disappears on January 30th, and for weeks people online would speculate that the hate may have driven him to leave this earth by his own hand, and everybody's suspicion would be confirmed true when he returned on February 18th. He was admitted to a hospital, which he describes as
"An enlightening experience, being the 4th time after a crisis over a year ago. I honestly feel great, although continuing posting is something that I don't want to do as of now."
But despite that, Francis would go back to posting, with now tens of thousands of followers. However, this also means that more people than ever decide to mock him. But on May 26th, it would get much worse than just the usual mocking. A user named Ricky tweeted a joke about Francis, who then quote-tweeted her, complaining about the joke, which would trigger his followers to harass her. Now on May 26th, Ricky's girlfriend reveals that because of the harassment, Ricky actually attempted to leave this earth too, and tweets from Ricky's private account would confirm that she did attempt, but luckily survived. Another user would post private messages with Francis where he says,
"I put them on blast because what they said was stupid. You can't argue with me on that. What am I supposed to do, dog? You expect me to handle everything with this ever-perfect godly whim just because I have a following? I don't know why Ricky would even do that. It's unpredictable."
And Francis would respond publicly, where he doubled down and says,
"If one tweet is enough to send someone over the edge, they have issues that are beyond me. Nothing I'd be aware of at first glance whatsoever. To put the blame on me for this is fucking insane, and I hope you can eventually understand that."
And he would even go as far as accuse Ricky of lying. The backlash he would receive because of this was extreme, and about an hour later he would tweet,
"Alright, I give up. Anything I was trying to build, it's over. I don't care about the money, the partnership, or even the fans anymore. There's no meds left in the house. My parents hid them, but I'll find another way to do it. I always do."
The next day Francis would post a short video that implies that he will do something drastic, and then once more he disappears. And 2 weeks later, Francis would confirm that he tried to leave this earth again, but survived, and has been checked in a mental hospital, and that while there he was actually doxxed. He tweets,
"For what it's worth, I'm not coming back. Period. I want my story to serve as an example of both not to do and what to dreadfully expect when you find fame."
But he replies to the original statement, changing his mind and saying,
"I just want to put it out there that me returning isn't a 0% chance, although it'll be way later when I feel like I've matured enough to withstand the toxicity that comes with platform management."
But Francis doesn't stay away for long. On June 22nd, he reveals to everyone that his home life is even more chaotic than his online life. He explains,
"For anyone wondering, my mom has essentially been controlling my entire life since I got home."
Further elaborating in another tweet, he says,
"They took away everything and threatened me being kicked out if I went online."
And on June 29th, he would post confirmation that his parents followed through and he's now homeless. He says that this is the worst situation he's ever dealt with, and again ends up in the hospital. And when he returns on July 19th again, he claims he will take an actual break this time. However, his breaks never really last long. And in August, Francis comes back to ask for help finding somewhere to stay, and eventually looking to get back into game development. Now he does again find himself in a minor controversy when he creates an NSFW account, which people criticize due to his fandom, including a large number of young people, which prompts him to delete it after 2 days. And for a couple of months, things are actually fairly calm. He announces in late October that he wants to sell the Fallen Chungus account. This sets off a chain of events. He frequently changes his mind and backs out of the sale, gets scammed by the buyer, and allegations of Francis scamming another user come out, all within a few days. And at the end of the day, the user who actually took over his account becomes known as Liquid Chungus and still has the account today. Francis would start posting on a new account, and with a smaller following, gets into less trouble, at least at first. In February, he is criticized for drawing NSFW art of questionably aged characters, such as Hello Kitty and other Sanrio characters. He would make a thread apologizing and saying that he had no clue about their ages. But this, along with his previous accusations, seem much darker in May, when Francis' biggest controversy occurs. On May 15th, 2025, users on Kiwi forums circulate rumors and allegations that in 2024, Francis and a girl named Isabella had relations. Their main evidence is 2 tweets from August 10th, 2024, one from each of them. At the time, they were both on the same program, at the same hospital. Francis was 18 and Isabella was freshly. People would begin to question Francis, including one of the game devs he works with.
It is discomforting, but for 2, if you can disprove it.
I don't care.
He denies it completely when asked and claims that this is all just to dunk on him and it shouldn't be taken seriously.
There's obviously so much distrust going on. I'm just gonna take my leave. I don't care. You know, you can own the game. I don't give a shit. I don't care if this is deflecting. It's not. I am so unbelievably tired of having to deal with Kiwi farms, having to deal with everything. I'm going cold turkey.
When directly asked about the tweets, he says,
"This is not proof of any interaction between us. It doesn't prove that we had relations or that I performed anything on her. I don't even know why she tweeted that so soon after my tweet, which was a random joke as per the usual humor of the fallen Chang's account at the time."
Now, due to their age difference, people take this pretty seriously, some even claiming it would have been illegal at the time. But while denying it, Francis still makes it clear that due to age of consent laws, where it occurred, it wouldn't have technically been illegal. But this doesn't make it much better for him, as people point out that he met Isabella when she was only and he was. In a Discord screenshot from March 2024, Francis even references their age gap and worries about it. He says,
"Let me lay it out for you. I'm turning 18 in May. She's turning in August. Is that too wide? I mean, she's gone through similar given we met in an outpatient program."
Now this makes it look even worse, because he seemed to wait right after she turned, which would have been the age where she was able to legally consent. Struck with this evidence, Francis finally stops denying it. He admits,
"I'm tired and rather would own up to it than spend my entire life lying. It wasn't technically illegal by any means, given the age of consent in Pennsylvania. But yes, we did. She came on to me, and it didn't really last long, as I was almost instantly regretting it mid-act."
He goes on to say he regrets but places a lot of blame on Isabella.
"I did everything in my power to not assert a power dynamic, to make it an equal exchange, but that doesn't matter in the end, as I failed the moment I let her do her thing."
But this is only the beginning. Isabella herself is asked for her side of things, and the story she tells is almost entirely different. Isabella starts by saying that they never actually had relations the way he described them. They had 2 encounters, as she calls them, and she shows screenshots of Francis messaging her about everything. At first he begs her to lie, and later, after he posted his original confession, he messaged her again saying,
"I had literally no other way to defend myself, so I just said we had. Now I have to delete everything. No one respects me anymore."
And when asked why she thinks Francis would lie about all of this, Isabella says,
"He wants to look like the victim. He wants people to think, oh, look at this poor kid I'm bullying. He got a... I should stop now. He doesn't realize that it will never happen."
Despite this evidence, Francis accuses her of lying, which will lead to Isabella eventually publicly addressing everything, basically just confirming what she said earlier. While it was consensual on both of their parts, it didn't go very far, and she would end it by saying that he is a victim of his own mind and refuses to get proper help. She then shows a series of texts where she begged him to go offline. But as everyone expects, he returns on May 17th with a long thread addressing the situation and finally admitting the whole truth. He starts with an apology to Isabella, saying,
"Isabella, I never got a chance to really formally say sorry. I never meant to take advantage of you in any way. I never considered us as unequal. I've been stunned for as long as I've been alive because of the environments I've lived in. It doesn't matter if it isn't technically illegal, it was incredibly wrong of me to even try and be your equal."
He then further apologizes to his friends and fellow game devs he lied to. His final thoughts in the thread are,
"I'm not seeking a lick of sympathy from this thread. Not my goal at all. My plan going forward is to simply leave and live in the real world for once. I plan to go to college by the end of this year, and I start work soon."
However, as always, Francis just couldn't stay away, and by July he would post that he was recently back in the psych ward and is actively and frequently posting again. Now what Francis and Isabella did wasn't technically illegal, but it's the tip of the iceberg that shows what being chronically online can do to a person.
I wasn't a good boyfriend, and it ended up being pretty damaging. I was a massive, inconsiderate, emotionally unavailable.
Hyojin Choi, known online as Squizzy, was a popular online artist, animator, YouTuber, and Twitch streamer who rose to prominence in 2017. By January 2018, Hyojin managed to garner 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and her following continued to grow over the years. However, in 2022, Hyojin's ex-boyfriend Ed, also known as Punk Duck, would post 2 tweets that would shatter Hyojin's reputation forever. In 2019, multiple scandals involving Hyojin broke, following her involvement in the accusations against YouTuber Michael Kucharski, better known online as Slazo. It all began when Hyojin's close friend, Che, accused Michael of SA and abuse. Che posted a twitlonger titled,
"Why I haven't been posting and what's been going on."
There are too many details to go into everything, but in summary, Michael would eventually post a video titled, "My Side," debunking most of the claims and taking accountability for some of the behavior he admitted he regretted. For example, Che made the claim claim in her tweet longer that
Michael was incredibly demanding of sexual favors and would often guilt or force me into situations to which I was not comfortable. If I was to try and deny or argue against him, he would become aggressive.
Eventually it came out that most of her claims were untrue though. In his video, Michael provided screenshots that show he did not behave in an aggressive way when Che expressed discomfort.
Because when you were there, I specifically said, "Hey, I'm really not in the mood for that stuff for me." You still did it. It made me feel like a bit of an object. I know you didn't mean to. I don't know. I don't want to fight. I'm sorry. I need to take no for an answer. I was in the wrong and I apologize. I hope you forgive me.
Along with other proof that some of her specific recounting of events was blatantly untrue.
This makes me sound like a monster, and if it did happen, I would be a monster. But this isn't how it happened. What did happen was this was a very awkward but mutual situation, where she describes I moved her hands to touch me. She did that of her own volition, and she even mentions this in Discord messages from after we met up in person. So, yeah, I'm not sure why she would lie about that.
Throughout the 30-minute video, he directly exposes most of her claims as lies or exaggerations. Unfortunately, other creators, including Hyojin, had already led a brutal defamation campaign against him without fact-checking any of it. Many of those responsible eventually apologized, but Hyojin opted to double down, stating on Twitter that she
didn't have a hand in writing the tweet longer at all
and acted only as
complete moral support.
This was prompted after DMs between Hyojin and other creators were leaked.
With events coming up, I want to make sure no one else associates with her. Shay, do you have that version of the post you said you were gonna send?
In her denial tweets, Hyojin claimed the screenshot was taken out of context, but this didn't sway the internet's opinion that she needed to apologize nonetheless. Now, while this was going on, people also began looking into Hyojin's past and were shocked and horrified with what they found. In a clip from 2017, Hyojin is seen on stream using the N-word.
What are you, black ass?
God, no!
Okay, get her out of here.
Oh my God! Hyojin!
Along with this, a leaked DM showed Hyojin using the slur multiple times while hurling disturbing insults. Now she claimed,
"This screenshot is fake and isn't me, but I've made edgy / racist / inappropriate jokes in the past."
Now it's not clear if the screenshot was actually faked or not, but those who knew Hyojin have stated that this was frequent behavior for her. Many people online found this deeply hypocritical, considering Hyojin complained about users behaving in racist ways towards her. Now disturbingly, also in 2017, Hyojin ran an NSFW account where she would often draw explicit and suggestive art of IRL content creators, one of whom was at the time. She then made a post defending herself.
Everyone that was drawn had requested it themselves in response to a public tweet and were all depicted as 18+.
But this was contradicted by another creator who tweeted,
"Didn't she draw me? I never wanted that at all."
After the intense backlash for these actions, Hyojin then posted a tweet threatening to leave this earth on her own accord. Now a lot of users insisted she should just apologize instead of going to these extreme lengths, but she didn't listen, and it was later confirmed she had been admitted to a mental hospital. Despite all of this, Hyojin would return to the internet, citing that she was doing better. She also thanked Ed for
being the biggest Chad and flying 24 hours just to visit me in a dingy, broken down hospital ward.
But her mental health struggles did not deflect from the fact she still had to apologize to Michael, even going as far as to mute the word Slazo from a Twitch chat. Eventually, Hyojin decided to apologize on Twitch. Unfortunately, the link to the clip is now broken and it doesn't seem like any archives exist. However, users on Reddit claimed the apology was dismissive and defensive, stating that while she should have looked at both sides of things, she didn't because the accuser was her IRL friend. Now Che disappeared from the internet shortly after this, but Hyojin somehow maintained and expanded her large following after this, hitting 1 million subscribers in June of 2022. This all changes though on July 19th of the same year, when Ed, the ex-boyfriend, posted a tweet containing 4 images, packed full of text that outlines the horrifying experience of his 2.5-year relationship with Hyojin. Ed and Hyojin would begin their relationship in 2019, and over the course of nearly 3 years, Hyojin would consistently emotionally abuse him. She would tear him down for everything, break up with him multiple times, and threaten to hurt herself, and much more. For the first 6 months, Hyojin would apologize when she would have these outbursts and promise Ed that it wouldn't happen again, and Ed would actually believe her, not knowing that this was only the beginning. 6 months into their relationship, the truly heinous behavior begins when Hyojin flies to visit Ed in early 2020. She unfortunately arrives only days before the COVID-19 restrictions are put in place, and when this forces her to return to Australia, she screams and insults him as he tries to help her, saying he is
useless.
She intentionally misconstructs his intentions, telling him,
"You're just doing this to make me feel stupid. Just fucking leave that."
Which would prompt him to apologize to her. Eventually, after Ed's mom begins to notice how often the two are fighting, she pays for Hyojin's flight back, despite Hyojin having already raised enough money for a ticket on stream. Ed outlines multiple other instances similar to this. Over the next 9 months, he would continue to take the blame for everything, not yet realizing he was in an abusive relationship. However, when Ed visits Hyojin for New Year's, things spiral out of control, and their relationship grows darker than ever before. On New Year's, Hyojin makes a scene in the public park when they try to assemble a tent to watch the fireworks. She calls Ed useless again, and as upsetting as this is, it is about to get much worse. On January 3rd, 2021, while struggling to set up a game, Hyojin would again bombard him with verbal abuse, bringing him to the verge of tears. She would then hop on a Discord call with friends like nothing happened. Ed, in shock, would ask her,
"Are you actually doing this?"
which would enrage Hyojin, but Ed would actually stand his ground and tell her what she did was up. But this is when she would take the abusive behavior to the next level. Hyojin would hit Ed so hard his head bounced off the wall. In complete shock, Ed would ask,
"What the f did you just do?"
And he would recall that
this was the first moment I realized I was in an abusive relationship. For a year it was emotional, and now it was physical.
Hyojin would then storm off in tears, while Ed called a nearby friend for help and frantically packs. His friend would then call an ambulance to Hyojin's home. Now Hyojin walks in on Ed packing, and when she realizes what he's doing, she brandishes a knife at him before turning it on herself. Ed would receive multiple injuries when wrestling it away from her. And to make matters worse, Hyojin's mom would walk in and begin to scream and insult Hyojin herself. The ambulance arrives, and along with it, the police. Ed tells him everything, worried that if he doesn't, he will be mistakenly charged with a felony. But fortunately, Hyojin is taken away in cuffs, while Ed Ubers to his friend's house. And this is when Hyojin would begin to text him.
"You think I wanted this? You told the police first thing that I hit you. You wanted me to be detained. I need to say this. What you did cannot happen ever again. We'll talk about this when I'm there, okay? If this court case goes well, that's fine. If it doesn't, I'll have nothing to live for. So that court case better do well. I know you're saying sorry, but it still happened. I know I can't undo that, and it's still going to affect me long term. This didn't help my mental health. It made it worse, and it's your fault. I am not your punching bag. Don't act like you're an abuse victim. I've been through the worst. I literally am, and I'm sorry you have, but it doesn't give you an excuse or the right to treat me like you did. You backed me into a corner, and I was terrified. You scared the shit out of me. I'm a whole foot shorter than you. Do something about it. No, I will never lay a hand on you, ever."
She once again manipulated him into apologizing, and she would convince him to stay with her and write a statement to the police so she wouldn't get in trouble. For another year, Ed would endure Hyojin's behavior, saying,
"Forgiving them for this was the worst mistake of my life. Letting that go basically opened the floodgates for every piece of textbook abuse you can imagine."
Towards the end of 2021, Hyojin would reveal that she had been lying about taking her medication and attending therapy, and a few weeks later, Ed would finally break up with her. Now after this, Hyojin would cut off communication completely, and she would begin dating somebody else. But a couple of months later, she would join a Discord server Ed is in, and when Ed politely expressed his discomfort at this, Hyojin threatened him and removed him on every platform. Now after Ed's post, Hyojin would begin to lose a lot of followers rapidly, and by July, she would drop below 1 million subscribers. On August 2nd, she would then publicly tweet an apology to Ed, admitting everything he said was true, saying,
"I look at the person I was a couple of years ago. Even if I have changed, those were my actions, and I understand that this was deserved."
And she claims that she's currently seeking therapy. This is the last thing Hyojin posts, ending her statement with, "I'm not gonna come back till I'm better. I just hope I can show that I can change clearly for people to see in the future." As of 2025, she still hasn't resurfaced online. The next few cases are even worse, since there are people not of age involved. In 2020, the Twitter art community is hit with back-to-back scandals. In less than 1 month, 3 prominent artists are exposed for actions that range from suspicious to downright criminal. The first to be outed is Honoel A. Ibardolaza, a popular artist in the Splatoon fandom, who went by Hi or Nami online. On August 18th, a 15-year-old boy named Charles, aka Chibins, posts a twitlonger titled,
"My experience with Get Good Nami."
Since he uses multiple names, we'll be referring to him as Nami throughout, since this is how Charles refers to him in the post. It all begins in 2015, when Nintendo releases the game Splatoon. Nami begins posting his comic series Get Good Nami on Nintendo's old social media platform, Miiverse. Miiverse. And Charles, who frequently played the game, recalls,
Nami was a big inspiration for me. I stumbled upon the Splatoon comics around 2015, and I was a huge fan of them. By some chance, I found them on Miiverse. There was an existing friend group that I was slowly absorbed into. This group of commenters was nicknamed the Nami Crew, and I was glad to be a part of it.
Now, when Nintendo announced that they were shutting down the Miiverse, Nami decided to create a private Discord server for the group, and on December 31st, 2016, Charles would join. Now, he's incredibly active in the server and says,
I was at the time, but I was still having a good time. I talked there nearly every day, and I talked to Nami in DMs a lot, like every morning and night. It didn't take long for them to ask questions about me. Keep in mind, Nami is an adult.
Now, Nami's exact age isn't known. However, it's clear that he's at least in his 30s because of his long history publishing books and comics, going as far back as the 90s. One user shows Discord messages where Nami confirms that.
So you're saying you've been doing this for 25 years? I suppose I am. Man, you've been at this longer than I've been alive. Yep.
A grown man becoming so close with a small human is already strange, but things are about to go from strange to downright sinister. The first time Nami makes Charles feel uncomfortable occurs when he unexpectedly asks Charles to send a picture of his face. Charles recalls,
I really didn't want to do it, but I caved in. Nami explicitly said that I looked cute.
Now, once Nami is able to convince Charles to send that first picture, it opens the floodgates for increasingly disturbing behavior. He also mentions a group between Nami himself and his friend named Eli, where Nami continues to test boundaries. Charles describes the group chat as,
Nami liked to ask about my feet and talked about and make stuff about me and my friend Eli wearing pajamas.
Over the next couple of years, Nami pressures him to send more and more pictures, continuing to make inappropriate comments and threatening to leave the server if Charles refuses. Charles says,
they'd pretty much condition me to take pictures for them whenever they wanted.
At one point, after Charles mentions he's moving houses, Nami not only asks for pictures of Charles' new room, but also asks for his old address. Now, Charles would actually say no for the first time, but Nami would simply ask a couple of days later, and when Charles refuses again, Nami makes vague comments in the server that Charles knows are about him. In June 2018, when Charles asks his brother for help to take pictures for Nami, his brother expresses,
your Nami friend on Discord is a creep, and I don't want you to send any pics of yourself to them ever again.
Shortly after this, on July 1st, Nami then abruptly leaves the server, unfriending and unfollowing almost everyone. And when Charles messages Nami out of concern, he replies slowly and vaguely, but implies he left because Charles wouldn't send the pics he asked for. He simply guilt trips him by saying things like,
I guess I don't matter,
and
I guess I'm just a cartoon character.
For the next 2 months, every conversation between Nami and Charles goes the same way, and Nami frequently leaves and rejoins the server without a word. In September, however, Nami follows through on his threat and leaves the server for good. Understandably, the members have questions, but the mods avoid answering until eventually they reveal
it was due to heartbreak
caused by someone they didn't specify. Charles and Nami finally stop speaking, and Nami starts to brand his account as 18+ and openly creates art all of the sudden. Now, on June 29, 2020, Nami shocks everyone by rejoining the server, but as quickly as he appears, he leaves again. Charles only remembers,
I went back to DM Eli if he knew what was going on, and he had no idea. I told him what Nami had done to me in the past and went to get screenshots. When I found out, Nami deleted every single DM they'd ever sent me.
After their confession, Eli reveals that there's more to the story. Nami had asked Eli to take pictures of himself as usual, but this was different. Nami wanted pictures of Eli in his pajamas, and worse, in his underwear. Just like with Charles, Nami had conditioned Eli to send pictures whenever he asked to, and once he received those pictures, Nami used them for artistic inspiration. He posted the less suggestive drawings publicly, but in private, he sent Eli ones with just underwear. Eli was and Nami knew that. He just didn't care. Now, Charles' Twitter post spreads like wildfire, and Nami would have no choice to respond. So on August 19th, one day after Charles' post, Nami tweets a long statement, which she starts off by saying,
I'm writing this in response to the misleading allegations made against me.
He tries to justify himself with the following excuse.
I often feel alienated. As an artist, I'm a visual person, and I like to ask for pictures from everyone I know, so I can get a sense of what they like, how they live, etc.
But he admits he should have not asked anyone for details about their lives that they were uncomfortable sharing, and that he regrets not acting his age. He seems to feel guilty and apologizes for causing any emotional pain or discomfort. But then he shifts and writes,
the other accusations against me is simply something I cannot accept. I would never ever knowingly commit the kind of unethical behavior that I'm being accused of. The very idea sickens and saddens me. I am not that guy.
In his final words, he expresses gratitude and requests one last thing from his audience.
I hope that you can at least give me the benefit of the doubt. Thank you.
But most people don't think he deserved that benefit. They don't see a statement as remorse, they see it as deflection. And so just like that, his reputation was forever ruined. The art community is left shocked after this, but little do they know that in less than 2 weeks, more shocking accusations would come out.
I of course agree with you on that. The Twitter experience is kind of a varied one. With every good thing that comes from it, there is also the bad things.
John Bob was a popular artist, game developer, and animator. He initially gained popularity on Twitter from his simple but well-made animations, an interactive adventure game, John Bob's Quest. It's August 28th, 2020, and he posts a series of tweets. At the time, he has nearly 30,000 followers, so the post quickly gains traction. And because of this, it's not long before it leaves his bubble of loyal fans. This case has a unique aspect to it. It doesn't start with a victim speaking out. It's John Bob himself who tells the world about the crimes he committed. The first tweet reads,
"I'm going to out myself for things I've done in the past and I'm not proud of. Someone I was friends with a couple of years ago shared DMs between us. Stuff I've long since forgotten. These were DMs of an explicit nature between me and her. She was and I was 18.
The girl in these screenshots has chosen to keep her identity anonymous, so we'll simply refer to her as Sarah. The conversation John Bob posts begins with Sarah sending him explicit art drawn by her friend, and this spawns the following interaction.
Aren't you a dude? Ah, yes. Well, it's hot, I'll give you that. How old are you again? And a half. What would you say if I actually exploded to this? Haha.
John continues to thread and attempts to explain his actions by saying,
"The next part is just for context, not justification for what I did. To be clear, she had initiated the explicit nature of the conversation. I wasn't picking her out to prey upon. She had started it. But I was 18, a legal adult. I should have known that that was not okay. I was very ignorant of how I should have acted. I guess in my mind, a 3-year gap didn't seem bad to me. I didn't know then that it was not okay for a to interact with NSFW content at all. After all, I had looked at adult stuff when I was, but that doesn't make what I did okay."
He goes on to apologize for his actions and hopes that people can forgive him. In the final tweet in the thread, he claims he's not posting this because someone is threatening to come forward, and it is solely due to how ashamed he is. Now here's the twist. A few hours after John's last tweet, Sarah makes a Twitter account to talk about the situation and tell her side of things. She clarifies,
"To be clear, I never initiated anything. I never intended to flirt with him. I never wanted him to say the things he did. You can believe whatever or whoever you want."
And she would also share the screenshots of before and after the out of context ones John posted, where we see John offering to draw NSFW art for her original character that is based on Sarah herself. When Sarah reveals a friend of hers had already drawn art like that, he asks to see it. In the screenshot that takes place after John conveniently cropped his post, he says,
"I'll draw explicit stuff of us if you roleplay with me sometimes."
Now she thinks he's joking at first, but when she realizes he's serious, she grows uncomfortable and awkward. But she worries that if she says something wrong, it'll ruin their friendship, so she simply doesn't. In another message from the next day, John would continue to reference NSFW art and doing graphic things to himself with the art. And the final image Sarah shares shows John sending her NSFW art months later. And in one of her tweets, Sarah references that she's spoken to others who John treated similarly. And around the same time, we get confirmation that this is true. Another artist posts their own experience with John, tweeting,
"He treated me really weirdly when I was and drew of my deer and showed me NSFW while I was I always knew it was weird, but I was scared I was overreacting. I just want people to know that the person in the screenshot isn't the only person he's been like this towards. There are others too."
And another few hours after this, a thread is posted showing more ways John lied about the situation. Leaked Discord messages show him sharing that Sarah messaged him and told him beforehand she was planning to go public with the screenshots, not just sharing them with him privately as he implied in his first tweet. Shortly after all of this new information comes to light, John quietly deactivates his Twitter, although he returns in the morning to address the new developments.
"I get why deactivating was a coward move. I'm reactivating to give a final statement, and then I'm going away for a long time. You have every right to be disgusted by me. I don't deny that one bit. I'm going to try my best to make things better, not just for me, but for those I've hurt."
He acknowledges that he
sugarcoated, victim blamed, and tried to tidy it up to soften the blow.
He retweets some of Sarah's posts and the threads exposing his lies, and then deactivates later the same day. But that doesn't mean that the story is over. His ex-girlfriend Bridgie would also come forward the same day to reveal herself as one of John's earliest, potentially first victims.
"For reference, I was his first girlfriend. He was and I was but his behavior turned quickly. I knew the victim as one of my friends at one point, but it turns out there are more victims. I am very sorry. I hid this cause man, I've been scared for the last 4 years. He really destroyed how I see relationships, and I've not managed to feel okay since."
She also reveals that John has an addiction to illicit materials, and in a Discord conversation between the two, John doesn't deny it when she mentions it, which adds up with his obsession regarding NSFW NSFW art. Bridgie says that in retrospect she considers the age gap disturbing, but even if others don't,
what he did would still be considered a form of emotional
and calls him a
manipulative, egotistical jerk.
After this, Bridgie's friend would also post confirmation of John's abusive behavior in the past, describing him as toxic and controlling. The next day, September 2nd, another user would make a Twitter account dedicated to their experience with John. They've also chosen to remain anonymous, so we'll call her Avery. In her first tweet, Avery says that she was friends with John from 2017 to 2019, and she begins to post screenshots of her private conversations with John. In the earliest message she posts, John asked her to send. While the tone is lighthearted, based on other examples, it seems like he's testing the waters for the future, and it doesn't help that he only asked for her age after he sent those messages.
How old are you, by the way? I am that of tiny of. Oh, nice. Haha. Lol. Well, I was when I started my channel.
This conversation takes place in late 2018, when John is already 18, but it doesn't stop him. In the next screenshot from a month later, John makes more lewd jokes and sends a meme about being. In another conversation from early 2019, he comments that if Avery wasn't gay, he would kiss them. At one point, he also asked her what they considered too big of an age gap. And the last two screenshots take place after John's 19th birthday. In one, he yet again makes a lewd joke, and in the last one, he calls Avery baby girl and she calls him adult boy. That night, John would return for one final post.
I acknowledge that I hurt a lot of people through my of young people. I wish nothing but peace and happiness for the people I've hurt. This isn't an attempt of self-pity or trying to justify what I did. This is a final message to the people I've hurt. Victims, I'm sorry for my unforgivable actions. To all the people I let down on the side, you are right to feel betrayed. Please don't accept or decline my apology, unless you were personally affected by my actions. As of this tweet, my account is now defunct, but I will delete it in the future.
And John would actually delete his account shortly after, and disappear. Since being outed, some of John's former friends have come forward to talk about even more creepy and off-putting experiences from him over the years, further proving how consistent his behavior was. In 2025, he still hasn't returned to social media. And for the next case, we need to rewind just a bit, because before John's scandal was done playing out, one of his friends would end up in a shockingly similar situation.
But one thing I will say in this situation, I do consider myself a victim.
Tarhead, who we'll just call Tar, was another fairly popular artist in the community. At the time, he had nearly 13,000 followers and was known for his distinct horror style and original character of the same name. Accompanied by a drawing of his character and John happily hanging out together, Tar tweets,
I personally don't think John Bob is a monster, but a pervert and touch-starved simp for sure. And that is what this judgment. You need to keep these kinds of feelings in check, because you might do something you regret and hurt people at the expense of your desires. Get help. I definitely experienced him making some of my friends uncomfortable with his weird advances, taking the slightest opportunity to flirt, and this is what ultimately got him in trouble.
Tar even replies to a post referencing how many had been called out in 2020, calling it
unfunny and not cool.
After this, he continues to tweet like normal, unaware that in a matter of hours, everything is about to change. A new account is created and tweets,
I am finally coming forward about my relationship with @Tarhead. I hope you will at least read what I have to say about the incident and make your own assessment on the situation.
At the time, the account is anonymous, but eventually the accuser will reveal their identity, so we'll just go ahead and refer to her by the name Chucky. Chucky starts off by saying that due to Tar's devoted fans, she's been too afraid to come out with her experience until now. In tweets posted on her personal account from the day before, after the John Bob accusations came out, Chucky mentioned she was also but expressed how terrified she was to reveal who. But when Chucky saw Tar's tweet coming to John's defense, she decided that she can't hold it in any longer. Her statement begins,
At the very start of 2020, I met Tar through a mutual friend's server. After talking for a bit, we had an explicit phone call, which I'm ashamed of. At the time, he didn't know I was. A day later, after being filled with guilt, I called him crying about how I'm. He wasn't concerned at all. All throughout January to the start of May, we were explicit in DMs and private.
I am at fault for not saying my age off the bat, and if it ended there, yes, I would be completely in the wrong. But even months after he knew my age, we still continued to do those things almost weekly, and he would even make jokes about me being like.
She uploads screenshots of multiple conversations from March, 2 months after she told Tar her age. The screenshots read,
Nice. Had a dream you were in my bed. Well, that's funny, you're cutie. One day I'll be underneath, on you. Please, I want to you.
Later on, Chucky posts even more screenshots, showing more suggestive and explicit messages from Tar, including ones where he asks her to send pictures. In one exchange, she even references her age and it goes like this.
Can you show me? Legally, no. Great.
Chucky says the thing that she is most ashamed of is that eventually he did convince her.
I never sent full on, like in text form, like as a picture. The only time I ever did anything that is when he was like, we were in a video call on Discord.
But along with the inappropriate affection, Tar leaves Chucky confused and hurt, as he often insults her, which he describes as,
he would call me obsessed and ungrateful for wanting him to interact and do stuff with me. He would be so mean to me at points I would cry in my bed at night over him. Going from this special person behind the scenes to suddenly feeling like he hated me really took a toll on me.
And even when she makes it very clear how it makes her feel, Tar would simply respond like this.
I love you. I hate you. This isn't helping my mental state. You're mean. Please just be nice to me.
He also insults her weight, calling her a pig, and even resorting to slurs. It's worth noting here that later on, other evidence of Tar making racist comments surface, as well as allegations of animal abuse. After insulting Chucky, Tar always follows it by saying things like he loves her. This cycle continues on until August, when Chucky's boyfriend looks through her phone and sees their messages. When she messages Tar about this, he's dismissive, as we see in this screenshot.
I'm literally bawling my eyes out. I wish I was dead. My life is literally over. Maybe it's time to change yourself. Take a break. The internet is worthless. Redeem. Goodbye forever.
On August 8th, Chucky then tweets that she's no longer associating with Tar and blocks him, which would prompt Tar to message her, asking her why she actually did it. She tells him she doesn't feel comfortable anymore, and he apologizes and takes some responsibility, ending the message expressing he is a little heartbroken. However, on August 12th, Chucky messages him to admit that after talking to some of their mutual friends, she realizes that he may have f***ed her and asks for a heartfelt apology. He, however, quickly turns aggressive due to one of their friends cutting ties with him after learning what he did, sending her a long message full of insults and victim blaming.
You don't deserve anything. I hate you. I wish I never met you. I wanted to move on for so long, and you didn't want to. Obsessive freak. I just wish you would have let it go more earlier, instead of waiting till you got caught.
And even worse insults. Chucky simply points out that she's a while he's an adult, and he should have stopped things. But Tar would simply continue to deflect all of the blame on her by arguing,
I didn't know you were. I told you right after and we still continued. My mind afterwards was poisoned with sick If I knew at first, I wouldn't have gone far. When you're in that mindset, you're not thinking rationally. I tried to stop it before it got so far for both of us.
And Chucky would actually be the one to apologize, telling him that he isn't a monster, but his hot and cold behavior ruined her. Tar, as he's done in the past, would then change his tone, saying,
I'm sorry for what I said about hating you and all. I know you do care about me. I was mean to you because I didn't know any other way of getting rid of you. I have a tiny appreciation for your care.
The conversation then ends with Chucky hoping they can be friends in the future, which she also emphasizes in her September 1st post. Now, as the allegations begin to spread throughout Twitter, Tar posts a vague tweet saying that something is happening, and an hour later he posts that he's working on a response, asking his followers to wait on that. He changes his layout and bio, and once again asks for his followers to wait, revealing that he will be leaving afterwards. Now, while he actually works on his response, multiple other victims would come forward to talk about him and or emotionally abusing them. Chucky would post a couple of more times, asking the people to not harass Tar, and the morning of September 2nd, she would actually take down her original call-out post, claiming that she's overwhelmed with how big it got. That afternoon, Tar changes his layout once more, and the bio simply reads,
Here lies the boogeyman.
And he finally posts his response in a tweet captioned,
It would be very selfish with all the people I disappointed and hurt to stay. I'm ashamed and regret a lot of this. Logging off after posting this. Gonna better myself with counseling. Support the people affected. Make of it what you will. Goodbye.
He attaches a long statement telling a story from his point of view, and after that, Chucky reveals her identity and apologizes to him publicly. However, in the follow-up post, she says that after speaking to other people, she feels the need to admit her real motivations for deleting the original call-out post.
I deleted the original call-out because that night I called him. We called and he was crying and I felt so bad. I felt like I ruined his life forever. And in that moment of me being so vulnerable for him, seeing him like that, he convinced me to delete the call out and private the account.
On September 15th, she uploads a video to clarify some things and puts an end to the saga. Chucky would actually comment beneath the video that she's spoken to Tar and he's in therapy. Now, Tar stopped posting publicly after this, but his Tumblr is still up there, where he mentions having a private account. And as disturbing and traumatizing this experience was, this next case doesn't just take place online.
I'm a work in progress to be a better person. I'm a human being, and we all make mistakes.
In 2014, James Bear, an artist and animator, begins posting on Twitter and YouTube. It's slow at first, but in May 2017, he uploads the first episode in an animated series that centers around his relationship with his girlfriend, Claire. The series becomes quite popular with his dry and self-deprecating humor as a staple. At the time, it seems like that's just their relationship dynamic, but looking back now, it's hard to ignore the red flags. James immerses himself in the art community and makes plenty of friends, but with that comes enemies. The first crack begins to show in late May when James posts a suggestive drawing of Claire and himself. He says it is targeted at a former friend of his, Aaron, which he claims is stalking Claire, and he wants to see what he will do. And as James hopes, the drawing upsets Aaron, who posts a document titled The Truth About James Bear. It goes over every single aspect of their friendships, spanning 182 pages. Now most of it can be considered benign, but buried within Aaron's rambling is an accusation that is almost too disgusting to believe. In a private message from 2016, James admits,
"It all began in February 2013 when I began to get a little friend called depression. I didn't know at the time, and I did something terrible. I had relations with my sister, which at the time I was and she was, and we've been doing this till, I'm gonna say till between 2015 and 2016.
Now 1 day later, he and Aaron would both suddenly apologize, and Aaron would take the document down. In the messages, James talked about how childhood trauma affected him and placed a lot of the blame on that, and most of the community pitied him after learning this. They believe what James said in the messages, saying that it was a mistake and he's changed. So while they acknowledge that it's disturbing, they generally forgive him for the thing he did. With more eyes on him than ever though, the allegations would resurface in September 2020, and he wouldn't deny it, saying,
"It did happen, but only once, when we were just and it was consensual."
Which is actually interesting, considering it directly contradicts his former timeline of 2013 to 2016. And maybe this time you'd think James would suffer some sort of serious consequence, but again, he doesn't. Instead, he just announces that he's taking a break for his mental health. His disappearance doesn't last long though, and 1 month later, he returns. After all, according to him,
"What happened back then was an isolated issue. It only happened once when I was it was already dealt with. Those who are involved are fine and made amends. I am not a threat to anyone, and the other claims are not true."
His friends and fans seem to forgive him. They believe he's remorseful, mentally ill, and trying to become a better person. Now James' videos get even more popular, now reaching over 100,000 subscribers, and from the outside looking in, it seems like things are better than ever. That is at least until March 2022, when a user posts a thread about the said allegations. He doesn't believe James deserves such a big following after what he did, and James would post a Twitter thread to address this, and this time he posted a video along with it. And since of course it's worked in the past, he again calls on people's sympathy, saying,
"The things I said years ago do not represent who I am today as a person, and I'm a work in progress to be a better person. I'm a human being, and we all make mistakes."
But this time around, he gets more hate than ever before. However, even then, he goes back to consistently posting YouTube animations, with Claire still by his side. Unlike before though, the hate simply doesn't stop, and in April 2023, he leaves Twitter completely. And 1 month later, James posts the last ever Claire and James video. This is the beginning of the end. Despite how many people James confided in about his sister, all we really had was his word. And what we learned in September 2024 is, James' word means nothing. After all these years, James' sister, Alicia, finally speaks out. She posts a document titled,
"I'm tired of staying silent."
And with it, any last shed of sympathy people held for him goes flying out the window. Alicia starts the document with the following words:
"I'm writing this doc to come forward with my abuse that my disgusting piece of brother, James Bear, has done to me. Yes, I'm unfortunately his sister, and I despise that person greatly."
And she attaches pictures to prove she is who she says she is, including James' 100,000 subscriber plaque. Now there's only one thing consistent between James and Alicia's stories. It begins in 2013, but after that, everything that Alicia describes is far worse. She immediately contradicts James' story when she says,
"I don't remember much about it, but that's when it started, and continued for a long time, especially past 2016. James lied about that part. It isn't just some one-time mistake, it's frequent."
And Alicia would list many different ways in which she would physically and emotionally hurt her. She says James pressured her, intimidated and bribed her until she agreed. According to James' unreliable storytelling, it was only a one-time thing, or it ended in 2016, but not according to Alicia. Alicia says,
"The last attempt of James pursuing me was in September 2020, when he asked me to come near his bed, but I declined, and so I went to another room."
Which is the exact month when Aaron's document came to light for the second time. Now Alicia would end her document with a plea for help, raising money to escape her home life, and people would rally around her. In January of 2024, James then implies on Twitter he plans to leave this earth, but it doesn't matter. Nobody shows him sympathy anymore. To make it even worse, a week later, Claire and her friends released their own document, showing James's abusive behavior throughout their entire relationship. She peels the curtain behind the happy cartoon couple and reveals years of emotional manipulation through their messages. As he often does, James threatens to leave this earth when he doesn't get what he wants from Claire.
"Stop saying that you deserve to die. If you want to act mature, then don't say all that stuff, that you want to die. Been mostly alone and it don't matter, right? Of course it doesn't. Stop pulling out your story again, saying you were alone and all that. And seriously, you're gonna tell someone who wants to die to pretty much stop thinking like this in order to act more mature?
After years of this kind of behavior, Claire would actually break up with James in 2023, but he simply couldn't let it go. He messages her friends, her family, and even random people from multiple different emails and accounts, switching between begging for forgiveness and posting horrible things about her, justifying it because she was flirting with other people, which is ironically something James was caught doing in the past too. The old clips of Claire and James seem different now, starting from the very first episode. The evidence mounts against James, and one thing becomes clear: he can't take no for an answer. Days after Claire's allegations come out, Alicia would suddenly delete the donation page and post the following tweet:
"Me and my family had a talk about the situation, and it would be best to not talk about it anymore. I caused nothing but stress along them, and they don't deserve it. I take full responsibility for my actions, especially with doxing them."
This raises concerns, especially because in the document, Alicia very explicitly spoke about her family ignoring her abuse when she recounts,
"One time in 2019 when I was lashing out at my mom, I told her what James did to me, and she was like, forget about it and move on. And when I told my mom that my second oldest brother was being weird to me, and she got mad at me when she noticed I was only wearing my bra and panties."
But despite that, people still hope that she managed to escape her situation. But then James posts a video. It's not just James this time though. Alicia is there too, vouching for his honesty.
If nobody is willing to believe me, then perhaps my sister will speak on behalf of that.
This is Alicia speaking, or in other words, this is his sister speaking. And what my brother James is saying is true. I would like to give my deepest apology to everyone for spreading misinformation about my brother and about my own family. Truth be told, that I only came forward because I was only upset, and my reasons for being upset were petty, and I had a falling out with a friend.
But nearly everyone agrees it sounds like she's reading from a script as she takes back what she said before. James later attempts to prove otherwise on Twitter, but it's useless. The excuse he used time and time again doesn't work, and people simply won't change their mind about it. Since the only evidence we have are their constantly changing stories, we may never know the truth. However, it seems like this time his reputation is truly dead. Similar to the art community, the Five Nights at Freddy's community can be quite scary. It's April 19th, 2022. The final book in the official Five Nights at Freddy's short story collection, Face Bear Frights number 12, Felix the Shark, has just been released. And as the readers go through the book's 3 stories, they begin noticing a strange pattern. Each story follows a character searching for something, only for that search to backfire, showing how curiosity can quickly turn into trouble. Now, a few months later, MadPat, a well-known game theorist on YouTube, uploads a game theory video called Five Nights at Freddy Has Dumped Me Again. He focuses on what he sees in Felix the Shark, suggesting it points to a scrapped Five Nights at Freddy's ARG.
Maybe FNAF was seeding out clues for something similar. Or maybe there were plans to do a similar sort of treasure hunt, but the plans got scrapped along the way. I can't be sure.
He also explains that an ARG, or alternate reality game, is an interactive story using the real world, with clues hidden in actual locations for people to find. And because much of Five Nights at Freddy's lore is connected to Utah, and the story The Scoop follows someone searching around for answers, he points to Utah as a likely place for fans to investigate, and asks them to share what they discover on the game theory subreddit.
It seems like something's here, but if it is, I can't figure it out on my own. Maybe you're a theorist from Utah and you know the locations I'm talking about. Maybe you do know how to break open the files of a mobile game. If you think you've gotten yourself some answers, or maybe just another lead, head on over to the Game Theorist subreddit to post your finding.
Soon after MadPat's video, fans would start posting leads and comparing notes, and the search would move from online discussions to real-world locations. Some would start calling businesses in Utah, and others would drive out to places they thought might be connected, and a few even considered breaking into private residences, turning what starts as online curiosity into harassment for the people on the receiving end. And in early June 2020, a worker at a small diner in Utah would post on the Game Theory subreddit saying,
"I work in a small diner in Southern Utah, and we got 17 calls over my shift asking if we were Fazbears. Come on y'all, it's common sense. Don't be harassing people over something that may not even be real."
The situation got so severe that the diner had to shut down the main phone line for the rest of the night, just to complete their shift.
Some people actually called the actual places of businesses in the towns that were referenced in the book. According to our subreddit, one place of business actually received enough annoying phone calls that they actually had to shut off their phones.
Now, while the thread remained active, some fans insisted that the that post was part of the ARG, as others complained that the fun was being ruined. The initial employee tried to respond, but the constant back and forth became so overwhelming, leading them to eventually delete their Reddit account completely. In the days that follow, another user would ask the community to stop as well, noting that other locations were being affected, including a water park that once had a shark as a mascot, which some fans linked to Felix the Shark. The search would escalate even more, when somebody decided to upload a photo of a man's grave from 1987, suggesting to dig it up for clues, which of course is extremely illegal, and that is when most people would finally start stepping back, realizing just how far the search had gone. On June 9th, 2022, MadPat would then upload a response video, calling the whole thing a wild goose chase, and telling the viewers to stop participating.
I never wanted or intended anyone to bother real people, and it's never ever acceptable to harass an individual or a place of business.
And as a result, the search would lose its momentum. Even then, the consequences were already clear, since the hunt pulled real people into something they never asked to be a part of. But unlike MadPat, however, this next person was directly tied to the series itself, and became infamous for her actions within the community.
She also participated in really vulgar Nazi/uniform groups on DeviantArt.
In early 2020, a notable artist named Lady Feshy, who had previously been hired by Scott Cawthon, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, to work on the franchise, would start posting a series of controversial comments on Reddit. The discussion centered around a Five Nights at Freddy character named Mangle, who's gender fluid, and in these comments she would say,
"She will always be a pretty girl for me, not this nonsense."
In another comment she would add,
"Millennials can be triggered by anything. Why can't I be triggered when someone is calling themselves something confusing and non-existent?"
And she would follow up with,
"I wish back the times when a joke, 'What gender is your baby? It will decide when it will be old enough,' was just a joke and not reality."
For someone directly connected to the franchise, these statements instantly faced a lot of criticism. She dismissed people's genders as nonsense, accusing them of making them up just to feel unique, and calling others easy to trigger. Now, as a result, Reddit would ban her from the platform, making it clear that her comments crossed the line. And over the next couple of months, users would repeatedly call out Feshy for her past comments. And because of her high profile in the Five Nights at Freddy's community, moderators would even personally reach out, asking her to address the situation. And eventually, she actually decided to respond publicly. On September 28, 2020, Feshy published an apology post. She opens up by saying she doesn't really want to apologize for what she said, but acknowledges that her words hurt innocent people. She then goes on to admit that her comments about gender identities and trans people were ignorant and uneducated. And she then explains that the cultural differences played a role, noting that trans people aren't common in her home country, Hungary. Feshy also claims that she's been harassed and provoked online to say more transphobic things, pointing to the abusive responses she received and emphasizing that this kind of treatment needed to stop. However, things would begin to take a more disturbing turn because of what she said next. After saying she regretted all of her past comments, she also mentions that she had received life-threatening messages over a fanfiction she wrote many years ago. The story, now deleted, was her own take on the Five Nights at Freddy universe, involving missing children and her version of the game's killer, William Afton, often referred to as Purple Guy, who she named Barney Miles. Her work sparked controversy because of how Barney and the scenes were written. The most infamous example appears in her fanfiction with Betty, the story's main character. In this scene, her death is described in grotesque detail, depicting Barney taking pleasure in harming her and others in extremely obscene ways. In response to the backlash, Feshy says,
"I admit, I got really carried away to show how twisted my version of the Purple Guy is. It had some explicit undertones, but no actual scenes where Purple Guy hurts a It still wasn't appropriate since many fans are young. It would be very different if I write it today."
This still wouldn't be the end though, as more of her dark past would come to light. On January 22nd, 2023, a user named IronAiden07 would post images on Twitter, revealing that Feshy had participated in anti-Semitic groups. The post includes screenshots and commentaries saying,
"She's drawn pictures of Nazis and is part of groups on DeviantArt. She even did a second drawing of these characters."
The post would quickly catch a lot of attention, with some users reacting in disbelief. One would write,
"Why do people idolize that garbage?"
While another writes,
"There's a
Within hours, these posts would spread across Twitter and the Five Nights at Freddy fan communities, with thousands of people seeing it. And so a month after that, Fishy would make a DeviantArt post addressing more allegations against her. She starts by acknowledging that she got permanently banned because of the recent posts linking her to these groups, responding,
"Yes, I joined these groups, that's very true. That was 15 plus years ago, when I was 18 to 20 years old, and just discovered anime/manga. Hellsing was one of the few mangas available in my language. I was super edgy back then and looked up everything with that design. Dark uniforms, blood, evil characters, I loved it. It took me years to realize these aren't edgy, but I totally forgot about the groups I joined. I was lazy to look up the groups I'm not active in anymore."
She would then address the accusations of being a clarifying that these claims were because of her fanfictions about a man she describes as a serial killer. Fishy would explain that at the time she was still edgy and her intent in creating Barney's sadistic personality was purely fictional, saying,
"But so you know, murderer men do feel power and when they kill, and they love it. That's why they do it. Some clearly can't differentiate fiction from reality."
She also addressed accusations of being a transphobe, which she admitted were true. Looking back, she explains that at the time she was at one of the lowest points of her life, both mentally and physically, having lived with Crohn's disease for 17 years, and adds that when she's depressed, she tends to get angry and hostile, which caused problems with her family as well. Now around this time, more people start noticing things Fishy did in the past, including that in 2016, she traced several pieces of art created by other artists, with people from the community calling her out because of this. And she would publicly admit it, posting,
"Okay, since Kryptonite Dark Knight was really forcing this, I admit, I traced this image. It's not original."
But even after all of this, more stuff would come out about her. On February 23rd, 2023, a Twitter user named FrebO would post several screenshots of interactions between her and Fishy on DeviantArt from 2016.
"Here's an ableism plus transphobia double whammy. I could go on for longer about how she encouraged me, a very obvious year-old, to keep reading her up fanfics, but unfortunately most of the comments from that got nuked."
Later that same day, FrebO would post again, this time sharing a private message from Fishy. The screenshot shows an unknown person relaying a message from a fan, asking if they could write a fanfic based on her work, begging her to not go along with it. And Fishy would brush it off by saying,
"Torturing Ben and kidnapping and hurting Betty? Well, if the writing is good, I would read it."
With her name now completely out in the open, more and more people beginning to scrutinize her, and 2 days after the incident, she would address the screenshots. She admits that she did have those conversations with FrebO, but insists that FrebO actually brought it up first. With no way to confirm her claim, she ends up saying that although the story was initially marked as mature and age restricted, she removed it for greed and likes, calling it a big mistake. And even Scott himself would eventually make a statement on Reddit saying,
"Hey everyone, I won't write much about this here, but I will say that Lady Fizzy no longer does artwork for Five Nights at Freddy's. Scenarios involving are disgusting and gross in any form, including fan art and fan fiction, and have no place in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. It is my understanding that she regrets this time in her life, and I wish her best going forward."
This next person, however, was another well-known figure in the community and was exposed for things that would completely destroy his reputation.
Criminal.
Squimpus McGrimpus was a YouTuber with over 350,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel. They're best known for being a pioneer in the Five Nights at Freddy's VHS genre, a style of fan-made analog horror videos based on a game series. Because of this, they became widely credited for their unique and intriguing videotapes online. Things would dramatically change on March 31st, 2020 though, when a year-old named Blue got into a conversation with Squimpus on Discord. At first it was clear that Squimpus already knew Blue's age, as they asked how old they currently were, and with Squimpus being at the time, it could be argued that both of them were and that nothing wrong could happen. However, Squimpus would not only send Blue NSFW artwork, but would continue doing so for 2 years after they first met. By then, he already turned 20, while Blue was still only. Not only this, but a different user, who we'll talk about later on, would also confirm that Squimpus was already in several adult-oriented groups, but despite that, they would still exchange this kind of content with Blue, instead of using legal and consenting spaces. And soon enough, Squimpus themselves would confess all of their actions in their friend's private server, saying,
"When I was 16, I talked to Blue, who was about stuff, as in we both had interest in it. This was, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush with them. I entertained the idea of, if it's not then it's okay for a very long time. I didn't realize how much hurt I was doing. Not that I do. All I can say is that I'm willing to own up to my mistakes in any way that I can. I did something really terrible, and it's more clear than it's ever been. Just know that I'm actively working to stop myself with these sort of things. Feel free to distance yourself from me until you're comfortable.
Shortly after, a statement from Blue themselves going into more detail about the situation started circling online. They wrote,
"Hello, I'm the one referred to as Blue. I was a fan of Squimp, being in her fan server for quite a while. While she initially approached me complimenting my work, things very quickly went and I eventually got uncomfortable, as she was well aware I was and continued. I was awestruck because she was an idol, and then scared to say anything because she was popular."
All of this would finally be exposed to the world on March 18th, 2023, when a Twitter user by the name of Burner Account posting a thread against all of the screenshots against Squimples, as well as Blue's statements about the situation. Now, as soon as this post gained attention, Squimples made another response on the same day, apologizing for their actions and confirming that all of what Burner had posted about them was entirely true. They ended the tweet by saying that they were the only one truly in the wrong, and that they were going to leave and take months or years before returning to the internet. With Squimples being gone from the internet and their last video being over 4 years old, it doesn't seem like she's coming back anytime soon. This next one though involves another popular creator whose actions would go on to be one of the darkest scandals in the community.
This apparently included Jody trying to convince a to commit, as well as talking about their
On August 2nd, 2025, a user by the name of The Tickler posted a public letter on Twitter regarding a well-known trans Five Nights at Freddy's YouTuber named GoMotion, otherwise known as Jody. This wasn't any ordinary letter, however, as it went into detail about Jody's years of questionably disturbing behavior towards them. It all starts on March 19th of 2020, when Tickler, who's at the time, receives a Discord message from an 18-year-old Jody asking about their fan game team that they have and if she can be a part of it. After a few days of chatting, Tickler would eventually join a server with Jody and start interacting with her through voice channels, which unfortunately would be the first of many. Their usual conversations start with Jody dumping her emotional problems on him, with Tickler consoling her during those moments. One example of this was when she opened up about her history of self-harm.
Also, I sort of used to self-harm kinda a lot. I was so depressed, I didn't know what else to do. And like, you get a legitimate high for it. I still don't hate the idea of doing it. Not that I would, of course, but it relaxed me so much. Don't ever do it again, please. It felt really good, I'm not gonna lie. I promise I won't do it for you.
But even then, Jody would confess even more disturbing things.
I did bad things, mostly when I was into I was rude to people, other channels who made edits, drove one kid to attempt to leave this earth. I don't talk to him anymore. I abused people. I was generally just kind of a dick to everyone. Jesus. Well, I wasn't the best person either, so I guess that's like the past now. Gotta focus on like now.
After this, Tickler would explain that Jody elaborated on the situation in a voice chat. She told them she had instructed this person to turn on his camera so she could watch while he attempted to leave this earth. From that point on, the way they interacted began to change, with Jody's fixation on Tickler quickly turning into obsession. Just a week after they first met, she would constantly burden Tickler with her struggles over wanting to be a certain gender.
I just wish I was a cis girl. I understand how upsetting that could be. Hopefully, eventually it's possible. I really want you to be able to have that. You deserve that. I just want a so bad. I just want to be happy. My stupid especially right now. It's uncomfortable as hell. I just want it gone.
Now several days would pass, and Jody would begin revealing yet another side of herself to Tickler, describing herself as having body dysphoria. In a few instances, she would talk about crying, as she was jealous of Tickler's voice, and would say that they're lucky to be born in the right body. Tickler was undeniably off-put by this, and would even apologize even when she hadn't done anything wrong. But not only that, Jody even went as far as stalking Tickler's boyfriend, who we'll call John, out of jealousy towards the two of them, saying that she wants something like that for herself.
Looked at John's DeviantArt again. Heh. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, this isn't your fault. Why do you look at it if it just upsets you? How did you even find it? I don't know. I have a jealousy problem. I just wish I was you so much.
And this kind of behavior would continue.
Looking at John's Twitter, smiley face. I'm just trying to focus on my breathing right now. I'm trying to push the pain out. I'm specifically jealous of you and your boyfriend. I just really want something like that myself.
Over the following months, Jody's messages about wishing to be a woman would continue. But apart from that, in late 2020, 2 statements from anonymous users we'll call Grigory and Kwan, who also know Tickler, surfaced from the internet, revealing the terrible things they went through with Jody herself.
Although my messages with Go Motion were rather brief, some things stick out to me. She would usually call me slurs when I had noted that they made me uncomfortable in the past, and would raise her voice in voice calls at me at times. She would dump some pretty heavy stuff on me without much warning, but nothing is as weird as she'd confess to me regarding Tickler that she would herself to art made by them, imagining herself as them or characters drawn by them in their art. There were often times in voice calls where she made me feel lesser, insulting me and berating me, even when I was trying to have a genuine conversation. The breaking point for me was a friend telling me Jody saw Tickler interacting with a trans woman, whom she took what the trans woman was saying to Tickler as flirtatious, and began talking her, saying things as vile as she doesn't even pass. With that happening, as well as her total transphobic rants on Twitter, I knew things weren't going to change.
It turns out Jody has been doing these things for a while, including using Tickler's artwork in inappropriate ways and keeping it a secret from her for years, which Jody decided to admit to Tickler in March of 2020. What Tickler learned far too late though was that Jody would fantasize about being Tickler in intimate ways. In a conversation between her and an unknown person, she would admit that
I told her about the drawings she made and how I'd have time to myself and look at them and stuff and imagine myself looking like that, and she's having a tough time processing that, but she only knows about the drawing. She doesn't know how I imagine myself as her or that I imagine myself as anybody else.
But that wasn't the end of it either. On the very same day Jody admitted this to Tickler, she suddenly began bringing up the idea of visiting during the summer in real life. For Tickler, the conversation was deeply unsettling, and even though Jody treated it casually, Tickler felt conflicted by how sudden the suggestion was. But as Tickler assumed that Jody seemed sorry for the things she'd done, Tickler simply couldn't deny her visit in the end. As soon as Jody arrived at their house in June of 2022, Jody's actions would only get more terrifying over time. The first couple of days seemed normal, but the day that they went on a hike at a local park, Jody started complaining that her legs hurt and that it was all the walking she was doing. But later that afternoon, after they had gotten home and Tickler's mom was out of the house, Jody admitted that it was all a lie. Jody revealed that the reason her legs hurt is because of her constantly stretching and flexing them to redirect blood, trying to distract herself from feeling while being close to Tickler. And immediately after saying that, Jody would take Tickler's hand and slowly guide it under her blanket. Now surprisingly, Tickler would actually lean in and kiss her, which in hindsight was, according to her, the biggest mistake of their life, as she felt that Jody's manipulation had pressured her to do all these things. Now throughout the following months, their relationship would only keep getting worse. Jody would become deeply obsessed with demanding Tickler's attention every day, growing jealous and aggressive whenever they tried to spend time with their friends, which in turn caused Tickler to lose the people they cared about. She would even admit to even more horrifying things in one of their chats, saying,
I hate my dad. I'm upset about how I'll never be accepted as trans by my family. I want to kill them all.
Now right after this, Jody would continue to harass Tickler's friends from her Discord server, even after promising she would stop. Now seeing her as someone who would never change, Tickler eventually reached a breaking point. So in December of 2024, Tickler decided to stop communicating with Jody altogether, but Jody would refuse that, and her behavior would grow even more unstable because of that. She would keep spamming Tickler with messages, despite being told that they want space, and would even stalk Tickler across multiple social media accounts, and even publicly threaten to hurt themselves over the situation. Now months would pass, with Tickler no longer being in contact with Jody, and things would finally start to quiet down, until May 21st, 2025, when Tickler would discover that Jody had been making hateful statements and extremely transphobic posts on Twitter, saying, "Let's become a statistic together." No longer wanting to tolerate her actions, Tickler would finally decide to gather all of this as proof of Jody's actions and expose her in front of the entire internet through a document. However, this isn't the end, because 4 days later, after the expose got posted, Jody would upload her own response document detailing her side of the situation. In it, she denies having taken advantage of Tickler or manipulating them, immediately using her mental health issues as justification for her actions. She also admits to being obsessive, but immediately blames Dad on her OCD OCD. And she would also argue against Tickler's claim that she told a kid to turn on his camera so she could watch while he tried to leave this earth. She says he simply wanted to call on Skype and didn't explicitly say that anything was wrong. She adds that this situation happened because they were both causing each other issues in a Minecraft server, and she had no idea that this would result in him trying to hurt himself in front of her. Now Jody would also talk about how she used to fantasize by pretending to be the opposite gender, which she specifically did to Tickler, saying,
"A few months after T had turned while I was 18, I did things to myself as them. Similarly, I felt euphoric imagining myself as female. There were no ulterior motives to this."
And she would end her document with an apology to Tickler, saying,
"T, if you're reading this, I'm so horribly sorry for how I ruined it."
To this day, even with all of the backlash and constant hate towards Jody, she still continues uploading videos on YouTube. Tickler, on the other hand, and many other people who were affected have now just started to get out of this long-standing nightmare. But this wasn't the case for the next individual, who became notorious for a lot of disturbing allegations against him.
It claims that Blackout has fantasies involving physical abuse to the point of bodily harm, murder, and having sex with dead bodies.
It's February 26, 2018. A German game developer named Nishi, also known as Blackout 1912, together with his team, releases a Five Nights at Freddy's inspired horror game called Dormitabus. The game is heavily inspired by the original Five Nights at Freddy's universe, but became infamous for its own story, focusing on a girl named Maria, originally based on Chica, one of the main animatronic characters from Five Nights at Freddy's. In this version, she suffers a brutal death at the hands of Garvey Wright, a character designed to parallel the franchise's antagonist William Afton. Almost immediately, the game gets recognized by most people in the community, even getting playthroughs from popular YouTubers such as Markiplier and Dako, making it undoubtedly one of the most popular Five Nights at Freddy's fan games of 2018. However, over the following months, many began to notice how disturbing the game truly was, even for a horror game. Its popularity gradually decreased due to criticism of its gameplay, story, and voice acting. But just 2 years later, it all went downhill because of one man. On November 12, 2020, a well-known game developer within the community who requested their real name not to be mentioned and who we'll call Andre, uploads a video exposing Nishi for having done deeply horrible things to multiple users online. It all goes back to 2016, when Andre meets Nishi and becomes friends with him. And although things seem fine at first, their friendship begins to fall apart due to one factor. Nishi, at the time, is known for being incredibly rude to every person he essentially talks to. And with this in mind, it doesn't take long before Andre starts witnessing how Nishi has been harassing people in the Five Nights at Freddy's community.
Nishi at the time was known for being a very, mean person. He was very critical of the fan game community, and he would attack people like King Carter, Sama Gamma, if anyone remembers that, Adam HD, and all that.
Which leads to Andre cutting things off with Nishi completely. He makes it clear that he doesn't want to be associated with someone who's verbally assaulting people he doesn't like, seeing that Nishi has grown even worse.
Eventually, it got to the point where I ended up cutting my association off with him. He was becoming a very bad person. I just didn't want to be involved.
And he surprisingly doesn't take it well. He begins harassing Andre in various ways. And with the people affected by his actions, a decision is made to post a video exposing him 2 years later.
This led to him harassing me. It started a whole rivalry between us. He would send his friends after me. He would comment on my game jolt. He would do all sorts of things. Eventually, this experience, along with many other people's experiences, led to an exposed video on him back in 2018.
The video posted in 2018 covers dozens of allegations, including multiple instances of Nishi's abusive and disturbing behavior. These claims detail him having depraved obsessions, taking pleasure in the idea of physical abuse, manipulating people, cheating on his partner, and using others for inappropriate activities. With this amount of information against him now entirely available online, Nishi vanishes from the public community.
This led to Nishi leaving the FNAF community and basically going under the radar. And it worsened our relationship too.
And unfortunately, the video somehow disappears from the internet as well. But even after the leak, Nishi wouldn't stop going after Andre. The harassment continued, and he eventually even began stalking him, blaming only him for making the video. On a random day in the same year though, Andre would be added to a group chat out of nowhere, and he would discover that the group consists of girls who had indecent interactions with Nishi. It's also at this exact time that Andre starts to finally connect that these girls are the ones mentioned in the expose, all of whom Nishi allegedly used for engaging in adult activities online. Out of all of these people though, there's one that really stands out to Andre, which he disturbingly refers to as the year-old.
Out of all these people, there was one that really stood out to me. It was the person who I'll just refer to as the year-old.
He explains that to his understanding, Nishi somehow got into contact with this person, which led to multiple illegal acts involving somebody not of age. He also discovers that Nishi sent an inappropriate photo of his behind to several people inside this group chat, specifically targeting the year-old. Shortly after revealing this piece of information online, a number of people would refuse to believe these claims, one of them being a user named Honko, who begins publicly defending Nishi and accuses Andre of fabricating everything. And this sparks a whole new thing. Andre would point out that Honko has been harassing him for years too, going back as far as 2017, which makes it hard to take his statements as anything more than a personal grudge. Now by the time these allegations surfaced, Nishi already left the internet, leaving one final message on his GameJolt account saying,
"Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye."
After this message, no further updates about Nishi emerged online. And although his allegations never disappeared, many felt that Nishi has gotten off far too easily, given his long history of abusive behavior and everything he was accused of. This next individual, however, is another creator whose game never got finished once people learned about the sickening things that he actually did.
Back in 2022, he got into contact with him and started sending NSFW images and videos to him.
Now, fan games have always been a big part of the Five Nights at Freddy's community, with some of them gaining almost as much recognition as the main series itself. And for a while, Night Shift, a Five Nights at Freddy's inspired game, looked like it could be one of those projects. With several people involved in its development, as well as many fans looking forward to its release, the game was beginning to look like one of the next big projects within the community. But despite that, it would come to an abrupt end, as behind the scenes, things weren't quite as they seemed. On August 5th, 2022, a 10-year-old user named JenPen began talking to Xyler Guy, who was Night Shift's main developer, after responding to a message he sent in a Discord server they were in. At the time, Xyler was well over 18, according to a friend we'll discuss later. However, despite that age gap, in one conversation, Xyler would send Jen a video that seemed normal at first, but moments later, it would begin flashing images of explicit material, such as inappropriate depictions of drawings of small humans, as well as suggestions and NSFW images. And Xyler didn't just send these types of images once either. Over the course of a few weeks, while already knowing that Jen was a little person due to his age being displayed in his bio, he would continue to send unsettling content he called memes, which included even sensitive imagery depicting men. Now eventually, Xyler would descend into sharing even more sickening material, which was highly inappropriate content involving, again, little humans. As Jen would describe it,
"In total there were 2 images of with their private parts, and one which was the most disgusting picture that I've ever seen in my life."
He went on to explain that what Xyler sent to him contained 2 images. One of the pictures, according to him, showed 3 small humans engaging in activities that were horribly obscene. Now surprisingly, Xyler wasn't the only disturbing person in the team. His friend named Blue was the co-director and main programmer of Night Shift, and he was caught talking inappropriately with a small human too, while possessing and distributing extremely indecent images of small humans. After gathering all of this evidence, Jen would finally reveal all of what they did to the entire internet. And in 2023, they uploaded a post containing a document on the gaming site GameJolt, which would lead to Xyler and Blue disappearing from the internet until now. But what this next person did was so severe that it horrified the entire community.
And it's that he's inspired an entire community of animal abusers to murder their cats on YouTube and post videos of it. It spawned an entire trend.
It's September 11th, 2014. Mattia Vera Oyarzo, a 10-year-old boy from Chile, has just made his YouTube channel named Peluchin Entertainment, with his channel name meaning plushie in Spanish. He starts uploading videos with his collection of Disney and Teletubby plushies as characters. But about a year later, his content would suddenly change. The innocent, kid-friendly videos he uploads turn into crude animations, and before long, his channel is almost entirely dedicated to covering the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Now he continues to make these videos for over 3 years, and the videos in total would garner over 12 million views and gain him a substantial number of subscribers. Around this time, however, a lot of horrible things would start appearing, not just on his channel, but affecting him personally as well. In one instance, he admits to his audience that he frequently watches and laughs at gore videos at such a young age, and he also becomes more and more socially dysfunctional, intentionally getting into conflicts with other creators for no reason other than to stir up drama, which would eventually result in strikes to his channel, as his recent videos at the time technically qualify as cyberbullying and harassment to YouTube, and eventually his behavior would even get worse. In November of 2018, for example, Matthias uploads a now deleted alarming video on his channel titled Tortazo, which translates to smack, showing him with his head blurred out, violently grabbing his cat by its limbs and fur. Community sources also say that the annotations about what he is saying in Spanish started appearing at this time, with him saying,
"Before I killed my cat had 2 broken limbs."
He then continues to shove his cat around on the ground and steps on it, with annotations appearing again saying,
"My cat now has a wounded tail. It's a little bit dislodged too."
He then kicks it onto the couch, grabs a wooden kitchen spoon to whack him before the video ends. And soon after, he would also upload other videos showing him hurting the cat with cat food and putting him in a toilet. While his toxic behavior has already been escalating for months before this, the backlash he's been getting up until now pales in comparison to the outrage this video brings. Although the video is now deleted, he would respond to the accusations of animal abuse in a pinned comment, which when translated reads,
"Seriously, there are animals who are saying that this is animal abuse. What an exaggeration. Ha ha ha. I don't know what's going on through their minds to consider this animal abuse."
Now what's even worse is that just a few days later, Matthias claims on his channel that the cat had passed away because of natural causes. Now the video would spread online almost immediately across various online forums, which ultimately led to him being doxxed, as some wanted to see revenge on the cat's behalf. A hashtag would even start circling around called #JustinForJason, which was the cat's name, and multiple change.org petitions would be created to terminate Matthias' channel and call for legal actions against him. Unfortunately, Jason the cat isn't the only animal who fell victim to him. On December 15th, Matthias adopts 2 new kittens and would proceed to do the same sickening things with them as he did to his original cat. On one particularly gruesome video, he would record himself dropping one of the kittens into a toilet and washing it and watching it struggle. Now several English-speaking creators would begin exposing the situation to a much larger audience, and he would then upload now deleted tweets where he says,
"I don't know who's been telling you that I regret what I did or that I feel bad about my cat dying. To me, it's worth nothing. Besides, I haven't done anything to it, and I regret absolutely nothing."
Thankfully, as more attention grew on Matthias' actions, an acquaintance would finally step in to save the cats, posting a picture of them on Facebook with this message:
"The cats are away from Matthias. As the only that knew where they were, I went to fetch them, and right now they're under the care of my family, while we look for people who will give them an appropriate place. Soon we'll speak to an animal rights advocate to promote their adoption."
At the same time, people online would also reach out to the police, who later released a statement on Matthias' case, saying,
"We informed the prosecutor's office regarding these occurrences, which ordered certain procedures that included an investigative process, such as putting together witness reports to establish the identity of this person, his parents, and how the events occurred."
Just a few months later, more of his actions would start coming to light.
This first one I believe you've probably heard of a couple years ago because it was kind of big news. The channel's called Pollution Entertainment. I believe it was run by a year-old Spanish-speaking YouTuber who filmed multiple videos where he was beating, kicking, pulling, throwing his cat against the wall until he eventually killed it on camera. He then adopted some kittens, which he flushed down a toilet trying to drown them and beat them as well, and it became kind of a big deal, at least in the Spanish-speaking YouTube community.
In August of 2020, almost 2 years later, after he took the life of his first cat, Moist Critical would bring attention to the story once more, highlighting the fact that in the wake of the original story, several other Spanish-speaking channels would begin assaulting and ending the lives of their cats in the name of Matthias.
But he's also inspired a trend among Spanish-speaking YouTubers where they go out and beat and kill cats in his honor. For some reason, this deranged loser has become some hero to animal abusers online.
Now thankfully, as Moist Critical's video gained more attention over time, the majority of Matthias' many YouTube channels were terminated a month later. However, on November 17, 2021, Matthias, on yet another account he had created, would suddenly upload a video titled, "This November 25th, I will be sentenced. Will it be my end?" The video opens with a short clip taken from the footage of him, just before he made his cat leave this world. He then says it was considered one of his most heinous crimes, to the point that 4 police cars were sent to take him into custody, while also confirming that during this time he was being treated by a psychiatrist. Matthias ends the video by directly stating that on November 25th he can finally be sentenced for the crime he committed 3 years earlier, and just a few days after going to court he would upload an update on another channel, which would also end up terminated, writing,
"I haven't had a definitive response about the sentence yet, so I'll start uploading videos again. And no, this wasn't an invention of mine. Lying about judicial matters is a crime. It's obvious that I wouldn't lie about that. I'll let you know when I receive a definite response."
And with his new channel named Matthias, now active on YouTube, he continues to create and upload content from time to time, which is crazy to think about. And while opinions remain divided over whether he deserved to still have a platform or not, the name he built for himself was something that will never be erased. Last but not least, let's talk about crimes that happen in kids' television. The Power Rangers franchise has been a very important show for many kids all around the world. The different type of Rangers were extremely relatable, so kids could pick out their favorite superhero. And of all the colors, arguably the most central character was the Red Ranger, who was originally played by Rick Medina Jr. His performance was extremely praised, and young viewers saw him as a literal figure of inspiration and heroism. But a abysmal event showed the reality of the actor behind the role. On January 31st, 2015, it had been 2 months since Rick started living with his roommate, Joshua Sutter, in Green Valley, a town in California. But on that day, Joshua stopped being his roommate, not because he moved out, but because he was unalived. It started off as a heated discussion between Joshua and Rick in the kitchen over the topic of Rick's girlfriend, whom we will be calling Lucy. Apparently, the discussion started off due to a simple complaint Joshua had about how Lucy parked her car. She was also present at the time of the argument, and slowly, Joshua's tone and aggressive nature were escalating into yelling and throwing things. To escape from him, Rick and Lucy went and locked themselves in the bathroom, but this wasn't going to stop Joshua, who started breaking the door. It was a regrettable decision since immediately after managing to pry it open, he would get stabbed multiple times by Rick with a sword. And it wasn't just any sword, but one that was a copy of the weapon from the Conan the Barbarian film. Now immediately while Joshua lay bleeding, Rick called 911 and informed them about the events. And Rick was then arrested and put on a $1 million bond on February 1st. But the investigators dismissed the charges because he claimed he only poked Joshua in self-defense. But the post-mortem revealed something else. Doctors reported that Joshua was stabbed at least 10 times, and that too very deeply. And there was another inconsistency between Rick's story and the evidence at the scene. The door, which Rick claimed was broken down by Joshua, was actually intact. He lied. Now all this evidence only surfaced because Rachel, Joshua's sister, pushed for an investigation, which led to Rick being arrested again in 2016, and he almost got sentenced to 26 years in prison, but since he accepted a plea deal, he was sentenced to 6 years instead. But while this case could still be argued as being grey, the next one is much darker and far more sinister.
A former child actor will stand trial for murder in a scheme to steal a yacht from a retired couple.
In the later part of 2004, Tom and Jackie Hawks posted an advertisement for the sale of their 55-feet yacht in the newspaper. It was a life-changing decision, since the couple spent much of their married life sailing across the blue ocean. But what forced them to finally anchor themselves to land was the fact that their son was a father now, and the two wanted to settle and spend time with their new grandchild. And for this to happen, they had to find a buyer for their yacht, which they had named Well Deserved. A few weeks later in November, a man contacted them, expressing his wish to buy the boat, but something about this man seemed odd. But eventually, seeing that he was married and had a newborn just like their son, they agreed. But just before finalizing the sale, however, the man asked them for a test drive, and as the boat left with Tom and Jackie, it never returned with them. But to know who this stranger was, we have to go back to a kids show. The show was called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which premiered on August 28, 1993, and went on to become one of America's top-rated kids television series in just 3 weeks. While many young people went on to act in the series, one particular young person is important to our story. This is John Julius Jacobson, whom we will be calling Skylar De Leon, since that's what he changed his name to later on. Skylar was born in a household that didn't have love or affection. His father was suffering from HIV and dealt with illegal substances, and throughout his childhood, Skylar was treated very harshly by his father, even being punished physically just because a pimple appeared on his face. Now his first actual achievement was when he sought a career in acting and landed a role in the Power Rangers series, but all he was cast as was an extra who wasn't even credited. But throughout his teenage life, Skylar lied to people that he was cast in a major role and not as an extra in the series. Now as the years passed, the abuse got harder to bear, and so Skylar escaped and joined the Marines. But that too was short-lived. He left that too and started roaming aimlessly, and this is when he meets a woman through email. Her name is Jennifer Henderson, and the two connect instantaneously thanks to their similar personalities. Soon they would even get married and give birth to a baby daughter, but they weren't financially stable. Skylar was in debt totaling $87,000 with no job and living in Jennifer's parents' house, and since he wasn't the kind to work a regular job, he decided to turn to crime. He started off with minor robberies, but quickly realized that this was not his forte, as he got arrested and ended up in California's Seal Beach City Jail, leaving Jennifer to take care of their baby daughter. For Jennifer, this was proving to be tiresome, as bills kept mounting up and they submerged in more debt. And this was the point when Skylar realized he had to do something more risky and profitable. And that's when he turned to more violent crimes. Skylar chose his first victim to be John Jarvis, whom he met in prison. One thing many people didn't know about Skylar was his unsettling ability to manipulate people. And it was with this talent that he convinced John about a deal in Mexico and made him bring $50,000. On December 26, 2003, John, Skylar, and Skylar's cousin, Michael, drove to Mexico regarding the fake deal that John thought was real. And the next day, John's body was found at 4 p.m., not breathing anymore. And 2 hours later, Skylar and Michael drive back into the USA with John's car, which was then cleaned off all evidence. But this was just the beginning. Encouraged by success in killing John and stealing his money, he now aimed for bigger crimes. And unfortunately, his eyes fell on the advertisement for the sale of a yacht named Well Deserved. It was Tom Hawk's yacht. Skylar knew that to pull this off, he needed all the help he could get. With Jennifer already on his side, he first contacted his workmate, Alonzo Machian, whom he convinced to participate by luring him with hopes of making a great amount of money. Then Skylar and Alonzo met Tom and Jackie on their yacht in November of 2004. Initially, Tom was rightly very suspicious of this young man, who claimed to have the money to buy such an expensive thing. Sensing this, Skylar decided to use this trump card to gain Tom's trust. This trump card was none other than Jennifer, who was now pregnant with another baby. On their next visit, Skylar reduced Tom's suspicion by introducing Jennifer and their daughter, which led to Tom actually letting down his guard and almost agreeing to the deal. But before the deal was finalized, Skylar wanted a test drive of the yacht. In reality, this test drive was just a pretense to lure Tom and Jackie into the middle of the ocean and steal their yacht. But there was one problem. Tom was a really muscular guy, and Skylar and Alonzo were both really thin and weak. So Skylar contacted a friend who had a much more fitting build and who could help him handle Tom. This friend was John Kennedy Fitzgerald, a former pastor turned gang member. So on the quiet noon of November 15, 2004, Skylar, Alonzo, and John took the Well Deserved for a test drive with Tom and Jackie on the boat. When they were safely far from land, the three overpowered Tom and Jackie and then forced them to sign the documents of the sale. When Tom resisted, John punched him in the face, almost making him unconscious. And after all that was done and the required documents were signed, the three tied Tom and Jackie to an anchor and threw them overboard. Immediately, the yacht returned to its place in the harbor and returned to its previous state by Skylar and Jennifer, who cleaned the interiors with bleach to remove all evidence. It was now their yacht. Now, after a few days, Tom's family actually got worried because there was no information about where they were. Police, after being alerted, then go to the harbor, where Tom and Jackie were last reported seen. And when they board the yacht, they find Skylar and Jennifer instead of Tom and Jackie Hawks. Skylar was immediately taken into custody for questioning. In the interrogation, he fabricated a story that after signing on the documents, Tom and Jackie just drove off in their cars. And to prove this, he even showed the documents that were signed by the couple. Even though the police started believing their story, they had the same doubt Tom had. How did such a young man manage to buy such an expensive yacht? To this question, however, Skylar replied that the money he used to buy the yacht was earned through illegal means, like an armed burglary he committed in 2002. Hearing this, the investigators were convinced, but still decided to do some more digging. And this is when they found something that raised their eyebrows. After going to Tom and Jackie's bank, they were surprised to come to know that just days before, Skylar and Jennifer were seen trying to withdraw money from Tom's bank account. Luckily, the bank manager refused. And on top of this, on the document, Jackie signed her name as Hawks instead of Hawks, which led to even more suspicion. As the police were puzzled with more and more contradictory evidence, they turned to get help from the public by asking if anyone had seen Tom and Jackie's vehicle. And this surprisingly works immediately, as someone called from Mexico saying that they spotted the car. And when the police eventually find the car, it is unfortunately not Tom, but a stranger who says he got his car from Skylar De Leon. And this is where the first domino in Skylar's fate fell. The police immediately arrest Skylar and search his home, only to find the Hawks family camera. From this point on, the police started investigating every claim Skylar made, and this eventually led them to the notary, who actually verified the documents of the purchase of the yacht. She admitted she never saw Tom or Jackie, but only saw Skylar and Alonzo. And after a bit more investigation, Alonzo eventually decided to give up and confess the entire truth in March of 2005. And so in 2006, when Skylar was on trial, he wasn't just being judged for the murder of Tom and Jackie, but also for the murder of the prison friend he betrayed, John Jarvis. Skylar, Jennifer, Alonzo, and John Kennedy would eventually be sentenced for this planned murder, but out of all of them, only Skylar and John would be met with the death penalty in 2009. Since then, Skylar has been on death row, and in 2024, he actually made it to the news again after it was reported that he had undergone a gender-changing surgery and renamed himself to Sofia De Leone. But unlike Skylar, the next man exploited the trust of instead of adults.
Somebody being that nice, you will never figure he would be a...
To young viewers in northern Louisiana during the late 1970s, he was a celebrity who wore a nice suit, hosted games, and smiled at young people on live television. Parents and young viewers adored him, so he became an idol, but the truth behind the character was different. In June 1979, Frank organized a camping trip to Louisiana's Kisatchie National Forest. He invited some small humans between years old, and parents assumed it was safe because Mr. Wonder was the one leading it. You hopefully know what I mean by small humans. I'll be continuing with it the rest of the video. However, this trust didn't last. Soon after the trip, the small humans began telling their parents what Frank had done to them. The complaints were so bad they reached the sheriff's office quickly, and a warrant was signed for his arrest. But when investigators were ready to act, Frank had already disappeared. His wife told the police he left in her car, and that exact vehicle was later found abandoned in Dallas. Authorities believed he escaped to Brazil, and they guessed that this wasn't just a panicked escape, but a pre-planned exit. Mr. Wonder vanished and became a ghost for literally decades. The police had a really hard time figuring out where he went, and there were almost no trails that led to him. This was because over the years, Frank changed his identity by taking a new name, Frank Silas, and moving from state to state. He eventually settled in San Diego during the mid-1980s, and in 1992, he made the new name official and legally became John Celis. And with this new identity, he returned to the same positions he once held. He surrounded himself with the small humans again. He became a Cub Scout leader, PTA president, and football coach. And he somehow blended perfectly into his new neighborhood and even invited local small humans to his house for swimming lessons. To neighbors, he was warm and approachable, and the fact that he always had small humans around was proof of his good nature. He eventually even built a company called Celis Enterprises to promote these activities. Just like before, small humans were drawn in, and the pattern was repeated. But unfortunately for him, the investigators never stopped looking. For 37 years, they continued a search for him. They tracked his different names and followed whatever faint trails they could find. And finally, in January 2016, the search ended. US Marshals arrested him at his home in Bonita, California, and charged him with multiple counts of inappropriate contact with small humans. The man who once played Mr. Wonder was no longer hiding. 2 years later, in 2018, Frank pleaded guilty to indecent behavior and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. For small humans, Mr. Wonder had once been a television hero, but for the victims, he was always something else. But now let's move on to the time when a fictional character caused harm to young viewers.
More than 600 suffered from convulsions and vomiting after watching a television cartoon program.
The year was 1997, and a seemingly innocent Pokemon episode unleashed a wave of medical emergencies across Japan. On December 16, 1997, at 6:30 PM, young viewers in Japan sat with excitement in front of their TVs to watch the new episode of Pokemon, because this episode was introducing a brand new Pokemon, Porygon. But what was meant to be its big debut ended up being its final one. In that episode, everything was going good for the first 20 minutes. The viewers were enjoying themselves. But then in the very next part, something happened. In this scene, Ash Pikachu went on to attack a row of missiles, and naturally the scene filled with explosions. But these explosions were animated in a way nobody expected. The animators used a technique called Paka Paka, where bright lights flashed rapidly for a while. They thought it looked spectacular, but instead it turned dangerous. The flashing lights on the screen turned out to be at a perfect frequency that could trigger seizures in a lot of kids. And this is exactly what happened. 685 young people all across Japan started seizing and were rushed to hospitals, with some even falling unconscious, while a few stayed in care for weeks. But this wasn't the end. The news of this incident first appeared 3 hours after the event, but it would be a long time before the actual episode stopped being broadcast. In the coming days, a kind of mass psychosis and fear would spread. They would end in nearly 12,000 young people seizing after watching that episode. The government quickly held an emergency meeting and decided to never broadcast that episode ever again. And as a consequence, Nintendo's shares would fall significantly by 3.2%, while the anime series would go on hiatus for 4 months. This event was so crucial that afterwards, Japan introduced strict new rules for animation. Flashing red lights could only appear 3 times a second, other flashes 5 times a second, and no flashing sequence could last longer than 2 seconds. This was not just random, as immediately after the incident, a research paper confirmed that this was an actual biological event called photosensitive epilepsy. And because of all this, Porygon the Pokemon was blacklisted. People even used the phrase Porygon did nothing wrong as a meme, and once even the official Pokemon Twitter posted this image. But until now, Porygon had barely appeared on screen again. In this case, it was a fictional character that carried the blame, but the next story shows what happens when the human behind a beloved character becomes the villain instead.
The 58-year-old was jailed for 10 months in September after being found guilty of 15 counts of making an indecent photograph of a...
In 2005, Chris Langham was at the peak of his profession. He began his career as the sole British writer of The Muppet Show and went on to win 2 awards from the Writers Guild of America in the 1970s. He even appeared as a guest in one episode after the actual actor couldn't make it in time. This episode surprisingly did good, and from then on, Chris began acting too. In 2006, he then won the BAFTA for Best Comedy Performance in the Thick of It, while his own series Help claimed the BAFTA TV award. But only days later, his name was back in the news, but this time for something deeply disturbing. It all started in the USA when Tom and Janice Reedy, a couple who were operating an illegal adult website from their home, got arrested. This site was called Landslide Productions, and it offered a range of videos and images for people to view and even subscribe to. But this wasn't the problem. Landslide Productions secretly offered paid access to sites that had inappropriate videos and images of small humans. And when the US police came across the site, they even found a list of 75,000 subscribers worldwide who had access to these websites. The police immediately started an operation called the Operation Avalanche, in which the US subscribers of Landslide Productions would be arrested. Apart from these, it also sent a list of 7,200 subscribers who were from the UK to the UK police. And this set off Operation OR, the biggest computer crime investigation in the UK. And one of the names that this operation was set to investigate was Chris himself. In December 2005, the police arrested him and searched his home, where they found these obscene video files featuring these people on his laptop, computer, and external hard drive, which led to his immediate arrest and subsequent trial. But the police just saw the surface of his crimes, as more serious allegations were coming when a female fan, let's call her Wanda, claimed that Chris took her innocence when she was only... This was serious, because if proved to be true, Chris would be guilty of 6 charges of indecent behavior and 2 other charges of indecency. And it was with this uncertainty that Chris stood at trial at Maidstone Trial Court in July 2007. In the hearing, he would first get acquitted from the charges made by Wanda. Chris would admit that he had slept with her, but only when she was an adult, and not before that. Wanda herself wasn't able to produce any definitive proof that what she said was true. And while he got free of these charges, we can't say the same about the next ones. In the second set of charges, Chris was convicted of 15 counts of downloading and possessing level 5 exploitation images and videos, the most extreme category. Regarding this, the prosecution had strong evidence. Forensic computer specialist Christopher Crude reported that he found dozens of folders containing exploitation videos of said audience in Chris' laptop. They were arranged so that the folders were named according to the genre. And when one video was shown in the jury, a member even vomited. For his defense, Chris gave 2 reasons. One, he claimed that he downloaded these videos only as part of research, since he was doing a character named Pedro for serious help. The second reason he gave was that he experienced this kind of exploitation when he was younger too, and he wished to understand more about what exactly happened to him. But the jury simply didn't believe that, and they only took 3 hours to give a verdict, which was of course guilty. And on the 14th September 2007, Chris was sentenced to 10 months in prison and was denied bail. This next case is not an individual's, but that of a whole corporation.
This man who was like trusted as basically a supervisor of is not safe.
Brandy, an 18-year-old eager to start her acting career, was cast in The Amanda Show, a popular sketch comedy television series that first aired on Nickelodeon in 2002. Her mother, whom we will be calling Martha, wanted to further Brandy's exposure to the acting industry, and Nickelodeon seemed like a promising next step. It was there that Brandy encountered Jason Handy, a production assistant in charge of the actors. Jason's charismatic and youthful appearance naturally led parents to trust him with their small humans, and they would continue doing so if not for a single incident involving Brandy. As Brandy got to know Jason, she became increasingly charmed by his words and actions. Slowly, she began telling Martha that she and Jason were exchanging emails and numbers, and Martha, thinking this was normal, didn't stop this development. But soon she would realize that this was a bad decision, as one day she went into Brandy's room seeing her cry. Not knowing what this was all about, Martha opened Brandy's computer, only to find a very disturbing email from Jason. In that email, Jason didn't have any clothes on and was doing inappropriate things to himself, and he captioned it with, "He sent it to her to let her know he was thinking of her." Overcoming the shock from seeing this, Martha strangely contemplated whether to call the police or not, fearing she would be judged as a bad parent because she let her daughter talk to him, and shockingly, she decided to not call the police and just leave the matter untouched. Yet, in a few years, Jason would be arrested on charges that he committed obscene acts with a small human younger than. And when the police searched his house, they would find heaps of obscene material involving young people in unsettling poses and acts. They also found a ton of photos from girls opposite his house. He also maintained individual Ziploc bags containing things that shouldn't have been stored, such as underwear from somebody else. Due to all this evidence, Jason was then sentenced to 6 years. However, after his release, Jason would be again arrested for behaving indecently with yet another small human, and would be then sentenced to 24 years in prison. But the consequences of his crime didn't end with him. Brandy would sacrifice her career and vanish permanently from the acting scene. And you might think this was just an isolated incident at Nickelodeon, but another employee was about to do something even more disturbing. Brian Peck acted in many roles over the course of his career. It was his job as a dialogue coach that would make him a respectable figure in the television industry. And his journey started with the hit Nickelodeon television series, The Amanda Show. For many young people and their parents, Brian was a reliable mentor who had always worked hard to teach them about acting and dialogue delivery. As a result, many people felt comfortable letting their young people spend time privately with Brian, thinking he was just giving them good advice. One such person was Drake Bell, the actor from the show Drake and Josh, and his father Joe Bell was attracted by Brian's celebrity status, especially his work with stars like Leonardo DiCaprio. So Joe trusted Brian with his son, allowing him to act in The Amanda Show. However, Joe soon began noticing some very questionable behaviors. Even the young people noticed some disturbing things. For example, in Brian's house, there was a painting that was sent personally by John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer who was on death row. Still, everyone gave him the benefit of the doubt, but underneath it all, actors like Drake were suffering. It happened one night when Drake was and was sleeping on Brian's couch, when he suddenly woke up and he saw that Brian was on him committing unspeakable things. And when he tried to speak, he was so shaken that he couldn't do anything and just had to surrender to Brian. Episodes like these would keep occurring now and then, until Drake was completely exhausted, mentally and physically. His girlfriend's mother even sent him to therapy, noticing his depressed state, but he simply didn't get better. But finally, The Amanda Show ended, and Drake was relieved he wouldn't have to work with Brian anymore, or so he thought. Soon after, Nickelodeon would finally announce a new show, Drake and Josh, where Brian was cast as Drake's dad. After hearing the news, Drake couldn't help but tell everything to his mother, as the thought of working with Brian again was unbearable. And so they went to the police, who made Drake describe every single detail of what happened. And that is not all. Drake even had to call Brian and secretly make him confess to his crimes. In 2003, Brian was finally arrested for indecent behavior towards small humans. However, many industry celebrities continued to support Brian's innocence. In fact, on the day of his sentencing, his side of the court was filled with Nickelodeon actors and producers. And even after his release from jail after 16 months, Brian immediately found work on the show The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, as if nothing had happened. He was only removed after a few months after his past made him a risk for the show's reputation. And while all of this was happening, Drake's name was kept under wraps, as it was only in 2024 that Drake officially came forward to share what happened to him to the public. But it only gets more disturbing in the next case, because it involves a man who has no regrets for what he had done.
Well, she was too young, and I freely admit that. But she was so convincing.
In March 2018, John Chris Felucci, the creator of the groundbreaking cartoon The Ren and Stimpy Show, was accused of unsettling things by two former artists, Robin Bird and Katie Rice, a story that shook the entire animation industry. John rose to fame in 1991 with the launch of The Ren and Stimpy Show on Nickelodeon, a show due to which his studio, Spimco, became synonymous with a way of animating that was completely out of the box and engaging. The show was the most popular cable program of its time, and his work went on to influence series like SpongeBob SquarePants and Rick and Morty. But as his artistic reputation grew, so did a pattern of troubling behavior behind the scenes. Robin Bird first wrote to John in 1994, when she was just. After that, he began sending her gifts, including art supplies and toys, before flying her to Los Angeles at the age of. It was then that John started showing his true colors by overstepping some boundaries. The following year, before her senior year of high school, Robin alleged that John brought her back to California to live with him as both his intern and his girlfriend. This arrangement, according to her, was an open secret within the studio, and for which Robin had to pay the price, as it gave her PTSD and forced her to leave the animation industry entirely. For Katie too, the experience was similar. She began receiving flirtatious letters from John at the age of At 18, she then went to work for him at Spimco, and John started sending her work emails begging for a relationship, threatened her, and once waited without clothes for her in the studio. Finally, she quit after John threatened to violently exploit her. Not only this, but Katie also found on his computer what she believed to be inappropriate content, including a certain audience. But things finally came to light in 2018, when BuzzFeed released a report detailing all these allegations, and colleagues confirmed that they heard similar stories. The filmmakers behind Happy Happy Joy Joy, a 2020 documentary on John's work, also said that in speaking with dozens of industry insiders, many described John's disturbing behavior. When confronted with the allegations, John apologized, as if this was just a small issue, and to reduce the blame, he even said that the reason he did all this was because he was mentally ill and unstable. But while his attorney admitted that he had a 16-year-old girlfriend in the 1990s, he said it was a period of emotional instability. But when pressed years later in the documentary to apologize directly to Robin Bird, his response was unsettling. Looking into the camera, he smirked and said,
I'd love to tell Robin in person. If she watches this, give me a call, please.
Bird, who was present at the film screening, replied publicly,
"Don't worry, I'm not going to call him."
The industry responded very swiftly, as Paramount Network, Cartoon Network, and Adult Swim each issued statements saying they would not work with them again. Nickelodeon, despite being most closely tied to his career, declined to comment, and John himself admitted he was forcibly retired from the industry even though he got more ideas. Legally, nothing came of the allegations. Police told Bird that the alleged crimes were too old to investigate, and the report about finding inappropriate content on John's computer was also dismissed, after police said that they couldn't obtain a warrant. No charges were ever filed, and no lawsuits reached the courts. These humans didn't go as far as to actually unalive people, but the next ones did.
Lelaki itu menjenguk ke dalam dan mendapati jasad Hanizah sudah kaku dan diharungi semut.
Intan Yusniza Mohammed Yunus was only 2 years old when she was already a familiar face on radio, television, Malaysia's kids program Kilap Kanak Kanak Angkasa Puri, broadcast by the country's national channel. She went to the Salak South School in Kuala Lumpur and lived with her foster mother Haniza Ismail. People admired her talent and affectionately called her a little star, but this star's glow would fade on June 22nd, 1991. That day, a neighbor noticed that even though it was 7 AM, Haniza still hadn't opened her grocery store. So he started calling out her name, and not getting any response, peeped inside, but a scene of horror awaited him there. Inside the house, he could see Haniza's body lying on the floor, and when more people arrived, they eventually got into the house and found Haniza and Intan lying in a pool of blood. Authorities were called, and when they searched the house, they found that some jewelry and cash were missing from the place, so it seemed like a typical case of theft gone wrong, until the authorities found signs that Intan and Haniza were inappropriately violated. Intan had been struck 5 times on the head with a blunt heavy object, and Haniza had suffered 2 blows, one of which had fractured her skull and caused a fatal brain hemorrhage. Upon doing the post-mortem, the doctors declared that Intan and Haniza died between 9:30 PM and 7 AM, but other than that, there was no strong evidence tying this to anybody else. So the police sought the help of the public by offering cash rewards to anyone who presented evidence that could be used to catch the killer, and it worked, as Intan's gold chain was reported at a pawn shop. After investigating further, they found out that the person who pawned it was a neighbor of Intan, Zainuzaman Muhammad, a 24-year-old unemployed addict, and he immediately confessed to murdering Intan and Haniza, all because he had a crush on the small celebrity. But in August 1992, more than a year after the killings, when Zainuzaman was facing trial at the High Court, he insisted that his confession was false, and he only did that because the police were violent with him. But by this time, the authorities already had strong evidence, and the court's dismissal of his confession didn't matter greatly. At the time, Malaysia still had jury trials. Under Section 302 of the Penal Code, if the jury decided he was guilty, the sentence would be death by hanging. The prosecution laid out their evidence. They said Zainuzaman had broken into the terrace house to steal, and when Haniza and Intan slept in the living room, he picked up an iron pipe and struck them both. They presented as evidence a butcher, R. Mihindran, who told the court that Zainuzaman had sold him a gold chain engraved with the name Intan, which was confirmed to belong to her. Another person from the neighborhood, Muhammad Fazli, testified that he'd seen Zainuzaman outside the victim's house at the time of the murders, and he picked them out of a police lineup. Zainuzaman's sentencing was weird, as by a majority of 5-2, the jury acquitted him of the murder of Haniza, but they also said that Zainuzaman admitted he'd broken into the house to steal jewelry, so he might have killed Intan in the meantime. On August 17, 1992, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a final verdict. By a majority of 6-1, they found him guilty of murdering year-old Intan Yusniza, Mohammed Yunus. The judge agreed with the jury and sentenced him to death by hanging. Zainuzaman showed no reaction when the sentence was read, but behind the surface of this nonchalance was fear of death. As immediately after being sentenced, Zainuzaman appealed to the Court of Appeal, which was rejected, and then took his case to federal court, Malaysia's highest court. And on September 30th, 1997, the court upheld both his convictions and his death sentence. Organizations like the Amnesty International appealed for clemency, but even the King of Malaysia rejected these petitions. And finally, on October 5th, 2001, 10 years after the murders, Zainuzaman was hanged in Kajang prison. He was 34, but the next man who committed a crime took a much darker path.
On a Wednesday morning in July, firemen found Judith and her mother Maria murdered by Judith's father.
Judith Barsi was one of the most recognizable stars of the 1980s. Her career spanned commercials, television shows, and major animated films. Her famous "Yup Yup Yup" line in The Land Before Time made audiences fall in love with her sweet, delicate voice.
Yep, that is what it is. Yep, yep, yep.
Which made it even more heartbreaking when her promising career was cut short by this disturbing event. Judith was born in California in 1978 to Joseph and Maria Barsi, a pair of Hungarian immigrants who fled the 1956 Soviet occupation of their homeland and subsequently settled in the United States. Maria had always dreamed of becoming an actress, but when that didn't happen, she poured her ambitions into Judith. She would teach her daughter ways to walk and pose, even when she was as young as Judith's big break came at a skating rink when a casting director, charmed by her small stature, offered her a life-changing opportunity. He decided to cast her in a commercial for Donald Duck orange juice, and from then on she would become a familiar face to American television watchers by appearing in more than 70 commercials and 10 shows. She soon transitioned to films, appearing in blockbusters like Eye of the Tiger and Jaws 2. And by 4th grade, Judith was earning nearly $100,000 a year. This allowed her family to buy a 3-bedroom house in West Hill, Los Angeles, and live very comfortably. But behind the success was a dark and violent home life. Judith's father, Joseph, was an alcoholic with a history of violence and no job. He'd been arrested 3 times for drunk driving, and his behavior was marked by a growing jealousy and paranoia over his daughter's success. His jealousy manifested as repeated and violent threats. He would tell his neighbors and friends that he would unalive his wife and his daughter and himself. And Judith used to tell her friends how her father threw pots and plates at her when he was drunk. One neighbor even recalled a chilling conversation where Joseph declared he would have to unalive Judith as well to prevent her from suffering if he unalived her mother. But this was not limited to physical behavior and even extended to psychological manipulation. Once when Judith had to go to the Bahamas to shoot her role in the Jaws sequel, Joseph threatened her with a knife, saying he would hurt her if she didn't return home. Joseph was incredibly insecure that his wife and daughter would leave him, so when a relative of Maria died in Hungary, Joseph even hid the message from them so they wouldn't fly to the funeral. However, it wasn't as if no one tried to get help. In 1986, Maria called the police after Joseph turned extremely violent, and the police, after finding no reliable injuries or signs, just left, and Maria decided to not go further since she was scared of what Joseph might do. This situation took a toll on Judith. She showed signs of severe stress, pulling out her own eyebrows and plucking her cat's whiskers. One notable instance was when Judith broke down in front of her agent, Ruth Hansen, before her audition. They took her to a psychologist who, upon meeting with the young actress, identified clear signs of severe psychological and physical. The psychologist reported it to Protective Services, finally sparking an investigation. But that too was dropped, when Maria assured them she would file for divorce. And this she was really going to do, but hesitated at the last moment because she didn't want to leave the house her daughter had worked so hard for. But this decision would turn out to be fatal. On July 25, 1987, Joseph decided to seal the fates of his daughter and wife. That night he entered Judith's bedroom and made her leave this earth. When Maria came to the hallway hearing gunshots, Joseph did the same to her. And this is where it gets darker, as Joseph just roamed in his house for the next 2 days like a ghost, with his wife and daughter lying around. On July 27th, he then poured gasoline all over the house and himself and set everything on fire. It would be hours before a neighbor, Eunice Daly, saw the smoke and called the police. And at the scene of horror, the firefighters would find the entire family. This tragedy shocked the nation. After her death, the animated film All Dogs Go to Heaven honored Judith with a dedication in the end credits. And now we'll move on to cases of online entertainment meant for and how they went incredibly wrong.
A lot of the videos seem to
start off as very friendly and then all of a sudden just turn into something very inappropriate.
Since the moment YouTube Kids was created, it has remained a battleground for creators trying to make more money than their competition. And these creators went to extreme lengths to get to watch their videos. And one of the most unsettling ways they try to do so is called Elsagate. To know where the word Elsagate came from, we have to look at a specific channel named Webs and Tiaras. On the surface, everything looks normal. The channel features videos where a man and a woman dress up as Spider-Man and Elsa to perform funny skits. These skits mainly contain kids' level of humor and physical comedy. But that is also when people started noticing some pretty weird things, like the fact that the YouTube channel managed to get 1 billion views in just months after posting their first videos. One theory was that they were using bots to generate views, but nobody could actually prove that. However, people quickly realized a more disturbing tactic they were using, which was to attract young people by showing them things they weren't meant to see. One such video showed Spider-Man being pregnant while Elsa performed a scan on them, and this video got around 17 million views in a very short time. Since they looked normal on the surface, YouTube filters didn't work, and these creators had a chance to produce more such videos, and soon many other channels started doing the same thing. Things would peak around 2017, when some Redditors stumbled across some really gross content. In one video, for example, Elsa went to the bathroom and picked up her waist to smear it on Spider-Man's face, and this was just one of many. Later that year, an independent blogger named Red, Wiped and Blue published a blog where he exposed these channels, and this is the first place on the internet where the word Elsagate was used.
This is by far the most dangerous issue I've come across to speak on. What I am about to reveal may put my family and myself in danger of character assassination or worse. I say for the record that it was my hand, mine alone, who harnessed the initiative, intention and willpower to make this go viral. But others had noticed this and posted on this only to have it removed before me.
In this blog, he would go on to fully reveal how much money these creators were making by producing this kind of content, and it turned out to be a lot. But there was a much more serious allegation that he made in the blog, which was that channels like Webs and Tiaras are run by international organizations that aim to desensitize small humans to predators. Soon, big news outlets like the BBC started picking up the story, and the effect was immediate. Many big companies like Nestle stopped showing their ads to young people on YouTube. And finally, because of the pressure from parents all around the world, YouTube was forced to terminate all such accounts in 2017. But still, some accounts survived. One such account that threaded a similar path, but which came off as more disturbing, was the channel Toy Freaks. Toy Freaks was run by Gregory Chisholm and his 2 daughters. In his videos, Gregory and his daughters would roleplay scenarios that were supposed to be funny, yet somewhere along the lines, things got out of hand. Gregory was a single father with 2 daughters, so he conceived the idea of creating a YouTube channel that specialized in pranks. But the pranks Gregory came up with were just cruel and outright disturbing. In some videos, the content got really alarming, like the video where Gregory places a pacifier in his mouth and acts like an infant with his 2 daughters. Another video featured his daughters in a bathtub while he threw a frog into it, and when a daughter started crying, all he did was laugh and record her reaction. On top of that, Gregory seemed to have no hesitation in showing his daughters in swimsuits to strangers online. And since people really love to watch such content, his channel grew almost instantly to around 8 million subscribers. But this was stopped thanks to James Bridle, a Greek artist, who first pointed out this channel as disturbing in his Medium blog.
Toy Freak specializes in gross out situations and activities which many viewers feel border on and exploitation, if not cross the line entirely, including people vomiting and in pain. Toy Freaks is a YouTube verified channel, whatever that means.
The fact that Gregory was producing such content was bad in itself, and on top of that, he was doing so with his own daughters. So YouTube was finally forced to terminate his channel. But this time YouTube went even further, as it also contacted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Small Humans, which in turn contacted the Illinois Police Department to investigate Gregory. Now, Gregory never got charged, but there was an even worse channel out there.
Parents behind the popular YouTube channel Daddy05 say they thought they were playing innocent pranks on their but instead they're sparking outrage and accusations of
When Mike Martin first started posting videos in 2015, he wanted attention, so he created the YouTube channel Daddy05, and it quickly pulled in an audience. At first it seemed like an ordinary family vlog, but over time the videos began to change. They were no longer about fun family activities or sweet moments. They were about pranks, which kept getting crueler as time went by. Mike's family was a large one. He, Mike, lived with his second wife Heather, and together they raised 5 kids. 3 were Heather's from an earlier relationship, and 2, Emma and Cody, were Mike's biological children from his first marriage. And and these 5 young people became the heart of the channel. The usual videos posted there were pranks, whose victims were the children of the family. Cody and Emma quickly stood out, but not for good reasons. Viewers noticed that Cody was often targeted, humiliated, and made to cry while everyone else laughed. And what the viewers saw went far beyond jokes. In one infamous video, Heather scattered invisible ink on the carpet and then screamed at Cody, demanding to know why he made a mess. He sobbed and pleaded, saying that he didn't do it. And this only made Mike and Heather scream louder. It was a painful watch for many. In another video, Mike instructed his son Alex to slap his sister Emma when she lost the game. The slap left Emma in tears. In yet another video, Cody was pushed into a bookcase hard enough to leave a bruise. These clips stayed online for millions of people to see. And for Mike, this meant more virality and money. But even he and Heather knew he might get into trouble, so he usually insisted that all of this was staged. They said that the kids were acting and that the tears were part of the show.
Some stuff was acted out, scripted.
But to anyone watching, the fear on the young actors' faces looked real. In fact, a psychologist who watched these videos described the behavior as abusive, and this was just one of the many criticisms hurled against the channel in 2017. At first, however, Mike neglected it. He claimed people were overreacting and that they just didn't get the humor behind the videos.
A lot of people don't see the humor in it.
But then the story broke out on YouTube. On April 17, 2017, YouTuber Philip DeFranco released a video compiling clips from Daddy of 5 and questioning whether the small humans were being treated badly. This video went viral, and suddenly the Martins weren't just a YouTube controversy, but a national story. Newspapers like the Washington Post and the Guardian started reporting it, and all the headlines asked the same question: when does a prank go too far? Even though nothing was decided, the channel started facing backlash in the form of sponsors canceling the contract and other YouTubers calling them out. And on April 22nd, Mike and Heather posted a video titled Daddy of 5's Apology. The couple sat together, looking shaken, and admitted that they made terrible parenting decisions.
We realized that we have made some terrible parenting decisions.
The apology ended, but the internet didn't forgive. The videos were already archived, and people who viewed them only got more furious. And behind the scenes, the situation was even worse. Cody and Emma's biological mother, Rose Hall, saw the clips and went to court, arguing that her children weren't safe in Martin's home. Protective services got involved, and within days an emergency hearing was held, and the results were fast. Cody and Emma were removed from Mike and Heather's custody and placed with Rose. For the Martins, the empire they had built on YouTube collapsed almost overnight. The apology couldn't undo years of footage, but while here it was limited to pranks, in the next one the people involved had to see worse.
I initially read the story. I'm not gonna lie, I was sick to my stomach.
In 2019, a worried girl contacted the Maricopa Police Department, and the fact that she would go on to reveal about her own mother significantly changed how people viewed young people-oriented content on YouTube. Michelle Hackney Hobson was a resident of Arizona who actively participated in the foster care and adoption system. Even though she had 4 biological kids, Michelle still went on fostering young people in her house. This made Michelle a respectable figure in the community, and the praise for her only increased when she legally adopted 7 between the ages of and years old. It can be said that it was the financial pressure in handling such a household that forced Michelle to start the YouTube channel Fantastic Adventures, in which she posted skits that were primarily intended for. In those skits, she cast her 7 adopted as characters who fought evil babysitters and villains. The content, while simple, was also effective, as it quickly gained millions of views in little time. To outsiders, this was the most suitable and wholesome content they could watch. But what the viewers couldn't see was the dark lives of the small humans in the videos. First of all, Michelle didn't allow any of her to attend an actual school, and all of their social interactions were limited to the family. This was because Michelle strongly believed that school and other activities would mean that they would have less time for shooting videos, so she mostly just homeschooled them. But that was also a lie, since there was neither homework nor lessons. The had to dedicate their whole time to these YouTube videos. Through this method, it was guaranteed that she would keep an eye on them continuously and also make money through YouTube. She would also subject them to atrocious punishments for the sake of the videos, and they had to follow a very strict schedule, any deviation from which resulted in either being starved or some kind of punishment which literally injured the small humans. And it wasn't like everything was covered up perfectly, because sometimes other people got a glimpse of what was happening. Early in 2011, a year before the channel's start, someone from the neighborhood reported that Michelle would lock the foster young people in a dark room where they would yell and cry. This was the so-called green room, which Michelle specifically intended for young people who didn't perform well in the YouTube videos. She would lock them in this windowless room for days, without any clothes. But when the Department of Safety arrived after being contacted by someone unknown, they found no evidence of any maltreatment and left. After which which they would arrive again 2 days later due to a complaint that their first search was inadequate. But even the second time, the search would reveal nothing. Over the years, visits like these became frequent and all ended in the same way. On one occasion, a DCS investigation was started when small humans who were in Michelle's foster care showed up to their daycare with red skin and human waste in the creases of their skin. Another time, a school teacher complained that her foster came to school with small shoes and gunk on their teeth. To this allegation, the DCS caseworker apparently laughed and dismissed it, even though there were more than 9 such visits. DCS always dismissed the allegations, which made this even more depressing. However, Michelle wasn't the only one running the horrible household. She took help from her biological sons, Logan and Ryan, who acted like her henchmen in making sure that every young person followed the rules. But the two brothers descended further into depravity by committing unspeakable acts with the small humans. But unlike these two brothers, Michelle's other biological child, Megan, was the one who put an end to her mother's brutality. In March of 2019, Megan was ordered by Michelle to take one of the siblings, whose name was Stacy, to the dentist since her teeth were rotting, most possibly due to Michelle's lack of care. And while returning to the doctor, the sister told Megan everything she could about what was happening in the house. Megan was shocked. It wasn't like she didn't know about the channel, she just didn't know the full extent of insanity that was going on in the house. Since Michelle's biological daughter, Megan, and Jordan moved out of the house long ago. After hearing the true extent of the torture from Stacy, Megan knew that this wasn't something to be ignored, so she decided to act. On March 13, 2019, Megan recorded Stacy's description about what Michelle did to her and the other little ones on a daily basis, and went with Jordan to meet a police officer outside the Maricopa Police Department. Hearing the awful description, the officers immediately went to Michelle's home to do a welfare check. The door was opened by Ryan, who casually agreed for the cops to look around the house. Their reaction wasn't surprising, since visits by the DCS were frequent. It was different this time, however. The cops questioned the little humans separately, while Michelle and Ryan were confined to the top floor. All the while, Michelle acted reckless, because she knew that the police were a lot more serious this time, because she'd guessed that it was Megan and Jordan who contacted the police. So she tried to make it seem like they were angry at her and just wanted to take revenge. But the police weren't going to buy that. One officer found Stacy crying in the pantry and asked her how she was. But she hesitated to speak in the beginning. Slowly, she started revealing more details about the physical torture, out of which the most cruel one was how Michelle had used 2 bottles of pepper spray on Stacy, alongside other disturbing things.
You know that spray that you use when there's like bad people and stuff?
Pepper spray? Yeah.
Empty 2 of those bottles on me.
Another officer noticed how most of the young people were malnourished and unwashed. One girl even admitted that Michelle usually starved them for a week or more. And finally, after checking on all the young people, the police managed to get a search warrant. Soon, even the arrest warrant followed, and the police took Michelle, Ryan, and Logan into custody. After a bit more investigation, Michelle would be jailed, but she wouldn't face any legal consequences since she would die before being sentenced. The reason for her death was reported to be a bleed in the brain, hence the court dismissed the charges. Even Ryan and Logan's charges were dismissed, but in 2025, Logan would be arrested and sentenced to 2.5 years of jail for physically violating the little humans once again.